right, let's call to order this meeting of the Community Infrastructure Services Committee. We have 5 consent items. Would someone like to move that? Moved by Councillor Davey. Councillor Gazzola, you would like to pull an item out?
Yeah, there are 2 or 3 items that I would like to ask a quick question on.
Oh, sorry, what number? I missed that.
I want to ask something on 2, 3. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else want to move anything out of consent? Councillor Chapman?
I just also had some questions that I can bounce. Oh, you need
just
to know?
yeah.
1 and 2. I think just 1 and 2.
Okay. Councillor Michaud?
Just a question for number 3.
Okay, so the motion's been put on the floor by Councillor Gazzola to move 1, 2, 3, and 4 out of consent. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Let's deal with number 5 just to get it out of the way. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. All right, number 1. Councillor Gazzola, go ahead.
I wanted to ask who sits on the appeal committee when people want to appeal their grants. Bruce.
Ms. Woodcock?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The appeal committee consists of Corey Bloom, Exec Director of Economic Development, Mark Hildebrand, Director of Neighborhood Programs and Services, and Kim Kugler, Director of Sport.
Okay, and these are all 3 different people that are not on the main committee, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Has there ever been consideration to have the main committee is made up of staff and outside individuals? Is there consideration of ever having an outside individual as one of the appeal committee people?
Mr. May?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think it's a really good idea that we should look at. This is a process that's only 2 years in the making. As you'll see on the business plan, we have a comprehensive review of our grants, and I think we should look at it through that review.
Thank you.
Councillor Chapman, you had something on number 1? Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering where the amount that we put into these Tier 2 grants comes from, the $173,000. I mean, it seems like an odd number, right? $203. So how did we come to that?
Mr. May?
Through you, Madam Chair, through the budget process, Council sets a overall community grants budget for Tier 1, Tier 2, and I believe the other one is in-kind facility grants. And so basically after Tier 1 is given out, the remainder of that pot is allocated to Tier 2 with a very small amount for the facility grants.
Okay, my other question was regarding, like I noticed some of these, like last year I guess, or the grant request was quite high. It doesn't tell us what they got in previous years, but and they got 0. So, I mean, this may tie in a bit to Councillor Gazzola's question about how the appeals process works or who's on the committee, but does that mean like Neruda Arts would get 0 from the City of Kitchener?
So through you, Madam Chair, if you can, A, no it doesn't, but B, point me to the page you're referring to.
It's on 1.5. Like, am I to assume that they're getting funding under the Tier 1 grant?
So through you, Madam Chair, Neruda Arts does receive, I don't know off the top of my head, an amount under Tier 1.
Okay.
There's a special provision that for Tier 1 groups, they can only apply for Tier 2 money for special projects.
Okay, so I assume that's the same with some of these others that are requesting large sums. Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's all the questions for number 1. Number 2, Councillor Gazzola?
No, I was just curious. I thought I had been reading where the limbs are being done away with. And I just wondered if, in view of that, if this, what we're dealing with on number 2 is still in place. I'm getting a nod up and down.
Yeah, Lorianne's here to answer.
Hi, thank you. Through the chair. As you've seen through the announcement through Premier Ford that they are looking at moving the model. At this point, though, our direction from the LHINs is business as usual. The bill has not been passed through the legislature yet, so by the time that's done and then transformation happens at a community level, we're expecting this is years away. So our marching orders from the LHIN is just contracts maintain as they have been.
Okay, that's fine.
Councillor Chapman, did you have a question on number 2?
That was one of my questions, but the other one was, if the LHIN funding disappears, does the city have a plan in place to address the Seniors Day and the peer support program? Like, will there be some adjustment or program that will continue?
Through Madam Chair, there is some provision in the agreement that speaks to transformation and transition. So we would have some time to do that work, come up with a plan, and bring it back to council for review.
Mr. May, did you have anything to add? No, you're good. Okay. No other question?
Well, I just also wondered, how many people participate in these programs? Do you have numbers?
Yes. Through the chair, we have a program offered 6 days a week at the Downtown Community Center, and on average, we get 26 people per day.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that's all the questions on number 2. Number 3. Dog licensing. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, two points. I just wanted to get the comment from the director as to this new program, if she supports it. And the other question I was wondering is, we've quoted comparisons with a lot of smaller communities, and I wondered if any of we're always comparing ourselves to Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, London. I just wondered if any of those cities have looked at this.
Go ahead, Ms. McNeil.
Through the chair, at this point, the Humane Society is only considering contracting with DocuPet. So the way our contract is structured with the Humane Society, Council has to give approval for them to even have those conversations. That's why this report is here today. And I am supportive of us exploring other options. I think Council's aware that we've struggled with dog licensing in the past. So this is a company who specializes in municipal licensing. That's their core service. And they're able to provide boots on the ground to actually do the work and do some of that door knocking that simply between us and the Humane Society, we just don't have the staffing resources to do in order to build that program. The second question in regards to the municipalities, these are the municipalities that we're aware of that are currently using DocuPet. They did only launch in 2014, so they've been around for about 5 years, so I'm assuming that's why they maybe haven't gone to some bigger municipalities yet. They're just establishing themselves with some of the smaller ones.
Yeah, thank you. I wonder if I could add another. Does this new system, does that have any impact on the amount of dollars that we expect to get or would pay out? Is the bottom line the same for us? Or could it even be better?
Through the chair, in terms of the amount of money that we pay, this would not be costing us anything further. We currently pay the Humane Society to do dog licensing on our behalf, so they would be using that funding to hire DocuPet. And in terms of growing the licensing, there certainly is a possibility that we could be growing that licensing pot and using it towards other programs such as responsible pet ownership strategies.
Thank you.
Councillor Michaud, did you have a question?
Yes, thanks. With regards, I think this initiative for the dog licensing is a good idea. I'm just wondering, would this be a good time to also explore cat licensing while you're doing this?
Through the chair, staff is currently doing some research on CAT licensing and best practices, and will be bringing a report back to council in the fall, at which time council can take that information and make a decision as to whether or not that's something they'd want staff to explore further.
Councillor Schneider?
No, Councillor Michaud asked my question. I just think out of fairness, I mean, dog owners are paying for everything, so I would love to see that report. Thank you.
All right, number 4, Dune South Drive, traffic calming. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I want to refer to 4.2. I just want to make sure I'm reading this. On table 1, when it says May 14 and October the 18, that's May 2014, not May the 14th, right? It's a 3, yeah, okay. These results are very good, show a good improvement. Do we have a standard as to what we would like to see? What kind of results we would aim to see as a result of traffic calming?
Mr. Cronkite?
Through you, Madam Chair, anytime we conduct a traffic calming study, what we're trying to do is get the overall operating speed along the roadway to at or below the speed limit. In this case, we didn't quite get there, but we still had a positive overall impact, which is good, especially on a street like Dune South Drive.
Okay, and I think that's good. And I would have thought if we can get a 5% return, that's good. So I just wanted to. The only other question, it's just a general type question. We seem to really have trouble getting engagement from the people when we only had 13% of the people responded. Is there anything we can do to get more responders to these types of questions?
Through you, Madam Chair, the response rate is a good question. It's something that, depending on the review, changes substantially. In this instance, because we're, with the traffic calming review process, we're touching base with the residents so many times. I think what you see, at least in the instance of Dune South Drive, may have been a reflection of the fact that the people felt that they were heard and didn't feel the need to respond to that final survey.
Councillor Michaud on this one?
Thank you. Just a question on 4.4, the map that you have there, and this might be, I just might be reading this wrong, and I apologize if I am. The Dune South Drive intersection improvement in the bottom corner there, that's the three-way stop. That's already done, right? Or is there something different going to happen there now? See where Dune Village Road and Dune South Drive meet?
Through you, Madam Chair, that was actually a substantial narrowing that we did at the intersection rather than an all-way stop. There is no all-way stop at that location.
There. And there won't be?
No.
Okay, thanks.
All right, that appears to be all the questions. So we go numbers 1 through 4. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Marsh, did you have a question?
Number 5?
We've already passed number 5, but if you want to ask your question, you may.
It's all right. That's
okay. Sorry, we did that right off the hop. Okay, so now we're moving on to item number 6, and Ms. Robson's here to give us a 5-minute presentation about the Artist in Residence Commission.
Through the chair, it actually will be myself, Caroline Barron. Okay, thank you. So not too long ago, we were introducing before council this year's Artist in Residence, Mary Neal, a community musician. And just as a quick refresher, the key components of the Artist in Residence program are that it aims to foster community engagement in the arts and that it supports the advancement of the artist practice as well. Prior to the start of her residency in 2017, Julie Sperling, who was the 2017 Artist in Residence, was well on her way to becoming an accomplished artist. But since then, she has been included as one of 10 world's most inspiring women mosaicists in both 2017 and 2018 by Mosaico, a highly acclaimed online forum for mosaic artists across the world. Last year, Julie was chosen to represent Canada in the International Biennial Exhibition of Contemporary Mosaics in RA, France. and was juried into the Mosaic Art International 2018 exhibition in Boston, Massachusetts. And just this past November, her work won the Best of Show at the Canadian Annual Mosaic Exhibition in Montreal. This year in the fall, she will have a solo show at the Agnes Jameson Gallery in Minden, Ontario. And through her artwork, Julie consistently continues to highlight the human impact on the environment. Her residency was unique in the sense that she was the first mosaic artist in the program and the first to focus on environmental sustainability through social activism. So she chose 4 themes: energy, food, transportation, and stormwater. And at a series of events during her residency, she asked community members to make a small mosaic, choosing one of those themes. Through visual imagery, each piece symbolized one action that an individual was willing to commit to address climate change. Overall, there are 244 mosaic pieces that you see in this triptych, and they're all organized in color-coded clouds representing each theme. The Kitchener Market, we feel, is an ideal setting for this artwork, not only because of its public accessibility, but also because of its focus on supporting local food providers and growers. One of the themes in this artwork is food, and when food is grown and consumed locally, it reduces food miles and promotes accountability. The market also connects people, creates experiences, and builds relationships. It is our and the artist's hope that the artwork will inspire visitors to connect and continue the conversation of awareness and personal reflection that leads to environmental stewardship.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there questions, Councillor Marsh?
Yeah, I'd like to move this recommendation, but also I want to know, each artist in residence, do we usually commission a piece of their art after their...
Yes, in the past it has been consistently so. Now this may change because we are seeing more applications from artists of various disciplines like Mary. So because, for example, Mary's a musician, she may not have a final commission, sort of a hard copy of the work. It might be process-based. So it may change in the future that we concentrate more on the process of the residency than the final kind of commission piece.
Sure, okay. And then for the most recent 2018 Artist in Residence,
right.
What's the time frame? This just feels later than
right,
usual.
That's
Maybe
true.
It was an election year, is that why?
It's a little unusual. The main reason actually was that the Kitchener Market, we were hoping to place it in the Kitchener Market. Julie's residency had a lot of workshops sort of around the city and also outdoors. So we felt Kitchener Market might be a good sort of a place where we can place it because it is 3 pieces of work. They were considering their own arts programming and kind of usage of the space on the main floor of for exhibition space. So we were sort of working with them to see can it actually find a home there. So with the 2018 commission, actually the artist is currently in Pakistan doing a solo show, which was a result of the residency here, which is great to see. So this process may be a little bit postponed. She does have a piece that she made with the community at a community center. So if we can work with the community center, this will hopefully work out this year. It also is dependent on framing and so forth. But for Julie's, it was because of the place, the actual physical place.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. There's no further questions.
Thank you.
Does anybody want to, it's been moved by Councillor Marsh. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, now we'll move on to number 7, which is the noise exemption request for Ever After Music Festival. And Gabriel is here to bring a delegation. He is from Beyond Oz Productions. Welcome, you have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Hello, good afternoon. I am Gabriel Matticchioni, and I will be representing Beyond Oz today. I appreciate all your time, and I look forward to another successful year of Ever After. I'd like to take a moment to highlight the magnitude of this event and the tourism it brings the region. Last year, we sold a ticket in every province, in almost every state, and some of Europe. We worked closely with Minto and tourism and received feedback on what was a complete hotel booking sellout. We take great pride in driving tourism in this great region. I know there has been some press on a fourth day of Ever After, and I just want to bring some clarity to that item. The Thursday night is in fact a strategic move to try and alleviate some of the traffic issues we experienced on Friday of last year. It was agreed in wrap-up meetings that having attendees check in on Thursday would hopefully aid in our issues. In doing this, we need to entice the public. So programming the Thursday night is something we see to be necessary. This pre-party would only utilize our second stage, start at 6 p.m., and come to a close at 11 p.m. Thank you, and if there's any questions, please.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any questions? Councillor Gazzola?
Sure, my questions are from the delegate or from staff. I'll throw it out. I would like to know if are there any differences in the requirements for this year compared to last year? Or are there any differences in the program, other than the starting on the Thursday night?
No, there are no differences. We'll be utilizing the same sound system and technology that we implemented last year. We found great success in that, so no changes.
So everything is much the same. Thank you.
Councillor Davey?
Thank you. Thanks for coming in. Pardon me, Gabriel. And I do appreciate the traffic concerns that's this event takes place in the ward I represent, and there was definitely some concerns about traffic last year, so I understand where you're coming from on this. Two questions. First is, on the Thursday evening, though, I understand it is the secondary stage. So is the clear expectation then that the total volume that's coming out of the venue will be lower than the other 3 evenings?
Yes, there would only be one stage working that night, so in fact there will be less volume coming from the venue. It also is a smaller rig. It is not the main stage, so yeah, it will be a little quieter.
Okay, good. And the recommendation for the Sunday evening as well is to also end at 9 p.m. Can I ask, is your intention in terms with relation to the previous year where the concert actually did go on past 9 p.m. even though there was no issues, is that the intention again this year?
We would like to program past 9 p.m. On the Sunday. We strive to be the best here in the region, and in doing that we need to counteract the people in Toronto and the other events there. So they all industry standard goes to 11 at night, so we would like to program past 9 p.m.
Okay, so if we approve the recommendation as it is, though, it will be ending, the bylaw exemption will be ending at 9 p.m. Would you still intend to go to 11 p.m. and take that risk?
We would like to program at the very least until 10, even if the recommendation is until 9. We saw no issues with the 10 o'clock ending last year. And using the same system, we expect the same result.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Councillor Marsh.
Thank you. I am glad to see the option of the silent concert club. That sounds, I hope that goes well. It sounds good. I'm just curious about the sound system for the secondary stage that you're planning to use throughout the festival, including Thursday night. Is the sound system the same directed sound as the main stage or not?
It doesn't have the robotic technology, but it is of the same nature that it will focus the sound on the general venue and the crowd there.
Okay. And then if we were to think about changing the exemption on Thursday night, which is a school night, high school kids are studying for exams, elementary kids are trying to go to sleep. If on Thursday night the noise exemption only went till 9 p.m., I understand that your programming may go later, but would that work for you? That then you would need to make sure that you reduce your sound in order to not be fined if there are complaints?
I think it would certainly be a start. We could probably manage to make it work. Having that shorter time frame with the exemption may cause us more issues with people trying to rush those gates as well, but it would certainly be a start.
Oh, okay. Sorry, can you explain what you just said there, that more people will try to rush the gates?
So if the event starts at 6 p.m. and they know that there might be some sound restrictions at 9, we'll likely have less time to queue more people. They would likely all try and get there at the same time, and could potentially cause traffic issues for the Thursday night.
Do you think that your concert goers care about our noise exemption? Like, do they really pay close attention to that and adjust their arrival time accordingly?
We get extensive feedback on all of our attendees. They follow the press avidly, and they're very active on social media. So I think they would see the exemption and what gets approved and probably make decisions based on that.
Did they leave early on the Sunday night in previous years, even though your programming went later because of the noise exemption that ended at 9?
Yes, this year they did leave early. We did have a large group leave, and that was because they anticipated the early ending.
Okay, or maybe they had to go to work the next day. Like, there might have been other reasons, right? Anyway, just putting it out there. Thank you. I may have an amendment just to put out there. I haven't talked to colleagues to see if this would, be amenable or not, but I think that it should be, the noise exemption on Thursday night, on a school night, should be till 9 p.m., so I just want to put that amendment out there.
Okay, Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Galloway Seelock. Thank you for coming to speak before us. I know after 2017 we had a lot of meetings and we came together and we dropped the decibel audibility in the neighborhoods down to 55 dB. And I know that was a concern at the time. Did you find that had any effect on what you could provide at the venue, and did it affect your experience for your concert goers?
Last year, because it was the first year we were trying to work within the restrictions, we did face some challenges for the paying customer. A lot of the attendees put us against some of our counterparts where we fell short with the sound. That being said, I think it's still a meetable goal. It's realistic. We'll just have to do some more work and homework to heighten the experience on site.
How did you find the relationship working between our staff when they came forward with a request for audio? Was it easy to work with our staff?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it gets easier as the years go on. We're at the point that we can call each other's cell phones and fix issues on the fly. So it's been a great experience, and we hope to continue that.
Okay. As I said, I think, we all worked really hard after 2017, and we know that, the reason for the majority of the complaints on the Sunday night of 2017 was the thermal inversion. And I think I want to commend you for getting PK Sound, because they did check out their website and seeing how that sound system can adapt so quickly to changing conditions and change the speaker array both vertically and horizontally. So I think that's made a big difference. I just will say that I'm a little disappointed about the going past the 9 o'clock on Sunday night, but I understand your need to fulfill your concert goers' experience on that. We didn't have any noise complaints after 9 last year, so I'm very confident that together we can have another successful ever after for you, and it'll be great economically for our area, for your concert goers, and a great experience. So I am prepared to move the recommendation of staff.
I appreciate that.
Mayor Verbanovic.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for coming in today. I too want to build on the questions and comments of Councillor Schneider, in that I certainly appreciate the investments that you made last year on the sound array, because obviously they helped alleviate many of the concerns that we experienced in 2017, and that I think ultimately made for not only a better experience for your customers and those attending the concert, but equally important, it made a better experience for those who chose not to avail themselves of the opportunity and didn't necessarily want to listen to it. And so I think that certainly has been a step in the right direction. I like Councillor Schneider. I am concerned and would have liked to have seen you strive towards a 9 o'clock ending, but I understand from a business model, much like at other outdoor concert venues, the shows typically go on till towards 11. I can understand why there's a need for it, and I think if we can continue to work collaboratively as we did last year, hopefully it won't be an issue. One question I do have for you, though, is I know there's been some discussion, and I just want to make sure, are we, from a security point of view and so on, are we continuing to partner with the Waterloo Regional Police Service in terms of this event?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so they'll continue to work with you along with private security that you've hired in the past?
Yes, of course. Both parties will be there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry. Thank you, Chair Galloway Seelock. Thanks, Gabrielle, for coming in. In the past, I know Rob has been appeared before us, and I understand there was a vision at one point to even expand it past Thursday. Is that still something that you're looking at as for the event, or adding another event to this?
For Ever After specifically, we experienced that it might not be feasible in the near future anyways to extend past, even the potentially 4 days, just because of the stay capability in the region. I think we're close to peaking and plateauing on that, and there's just nowhere for people to stay. So to grow the event anymore might be a little difficult in the current format. That being said, doing other events is definitely in the vision and should be done this summer.
Okay. Overall, when we look at the recommendation here, you're pretty well comfortable with what's here right now?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to make a quick comment, I guess. I see no need to put any further restrictions on Ever After Festival. I think I'm very comfortable with what we've seen here and the working relationship that we've had and built with staff. And quite honestly, I think if we see this continued pattern of good faith and less complaints, I'd be more than willing to want to loosen some of the restrictions, not full blown, but little by little loosen some of them back. I have a feeling as the system and the decibel level was what really was the main driver of why we've seen a big improvement. So again, I hope for another successful year for your organization, and thank you for bringing your event to our community.
Thank you.
Councillor Griswold, is your question for the delegation or for staff? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want you to confirm that you're aware that the noise exemption ends at 9 o'clock on Sunday.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Okay, and thank you. That was a question of staff.
Okay, we'll get there in a minute.
Pardon?
We'll get there in a minute. I just want to thank Gabrielle for coming. We appreciate your time in coming, and that's all the questions we have for you. Thank you. We'll open it up for questions of staff then. Councillor Griswold?
Yeah, I just want to know, what are the, when there's no noise exemption, what is the decibel standard that we go by?
Ms. McNeil?
Through the chair, when there are no decibel levels in place, we look at qualitative noise. So we would make an assessment as to the time of night, what we're hearing on that person's property, and whether or not we believe that it's excessive. And then we would determine whether a charge would be appropriate.
So after 9, the 55 decibels doesn't mean anything, or?
That's correct. So after 9 p.m., there would be no decibels in place. It would be up to the discretion of the officer when they respond out to a complainant's home to have a listen, see what it is they're hearing and see what that impact is and make a determination as they would with any other noise complaint.
Okay, so they don't need our approval as to what time they shut down, do they? As long as they live within the law, which says that they can't exceed the noise levels?
That's essentially correct. Once there's no, after 9 p.m., if there's no exemption in place, then they just become like everybody else who may be having a party or making noise, where if they're violating the noise bylaw and we believe it to be excessive, then they could be facing a fine.
Yeah, but otherwise they can go to 11 o'clock without our approval.
That's correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Schneider?
Thank you, Chair Galloway, CLOC. Gloria, just wanted to get your opinion on how you felt the relationship between our bylaw department and the organizers of Ever After went last year. Were you satisfied with the response rate that you got when you contacted the venue?
Through the chair, we were very pleased with the response last year. Mr. Macchioni actually paired us with their noise engineers that were running the PK sound system. We were texting directly with them, and if we had a call come in, we would notify them where it was coming in from the area. For example, Bridgeport, they would make some adjustments and we could audibly hear the change. So they were very responsive, and we worked quite well together last year with this system.
Okay, thank you.
All right, there's no further questions. So this has been moved by Councillor Schneider. We do have an amendment. Are you still putting that forward? Okay, so we have the amendment for 9 p.m. on the Thursday. We'll deal with that first, but I'm opening it up to comments first. So, Councillor Davey?
Thank you. I don't actually recall if there was an opportunity to thank everyone involved for the excellent results we had from last year, because we're all aware that 2017 was a big problem really for everyone. So I think it's important to acknowledge our bylaw staff and the work they did, as well as the promoter, because really last year couldn't have gone off any better than anyone could have hoped. The only real, I guess, contention again was going past 9 p.m. And as I recall, there was no real, well, there may have been a single complaint from someone that sort of heard something from their front porch or something like that, as I recall. There was no real issue, especially if you were inside with your doors closed, even though they did go past that 9 p.m. There was a mention of it in the media before. I can't help wondering if that was just a bit of clever marketing on behalf of the concert promoter here, but there was no issue. So I am comfortable with that strong relationship we have now. I'm comfortable supporting the recommendation as it is, especially knowing that the smaller stage hopefully means smaller sound on the Thursday evening. As for the 9 p.m. deadline on the Sunday, I do think that we need to maintain that. Even if they do go beyond that, under the same conditions they had in the previous year, hopefully they can keep it to a minimum where it doesn't really affect anyone. So at this point, I really want to acknowledge the work of everyone around the table, and I do want to wish the Ever After Music Festival the best of luck this year.
Councillor Marsh?
Yeah, I too want to thank the Ever After Music Festival. I think it's a great option for our community and for people from outside the community to come and visit, and I do think it's a good relationship with our staff, between our staff and the organizers. I do though still have memories of many complaints coming my way from residents I represent in Ward 10 who were very upset about the level of noise from 2017. And I just think that it would be a shame if we were to see the winds change and I don't know, all the different elements that might affect the noise levels in the neighborhood. But that's why I think that it's important to consider what night of the week we're looking at. By no means do I mean this amendment to dissuade the festival, and I wish them all the best, but I do think that 9 p.m. is a reasonable time for a noise exemption on a school night.
Thank you. And Councillor Gazzola?
Yes, I'm prepared to support the recommendation that's before us. I think this organization has shown to be a good corporate citizen in what they've done in the past couple of years. I think they've cooperated with our requests. I mean, we had one abnormal year that was really due to the weather, but it was 1 year that was totally abnormal, and we shouldn't put all our experience based on that 1 year. So I think they've cooperated in the past, and they work very closely with our staff on real time, so that I'm satisfied that things can stay in place, and that I'm prepared to give them the trial this year on the 6th to go with what they're requesting. We should give them one chance, and I'm sure that if things don't work out the way they've cooperated in the past, they will be quick to change it in the future. An area that I don't talk about a lot is economic development and what it does for our community, and there's a good example here of what it does, this brings into our community, and we need to support that, and we can do it by having the best of both worlds. I think we can have a good function for our community, bring valuable dollars into our community, and at the same time respect the people that live and close by. I must confess that in the ward that I represent, I've not ever heard problems in the past, but that's a matter of distance and whatnot. So, but for the community as a whole, I think it's a good function, and we should continue to give it our support. Thank you.
Mayor Verbanovic?
Thanks. I too will be supporting the motion in its present form. I do understand Councillor Marsh's concern, but I also look at the fact that over the last couple of years we've been able to develop a good working relationship. There were significant investments made in terms of the array system, the sound system that has certainly helped make a significant difference. And I think, the promoter is well aware that if there's going to be problems on the Thursday night, it's going to create challenges for, being able to go till 11 in the future. And so I'm comfortable with giving it that opportunity, as Councillor Gazzola has indicated. I mean, it's not just about economic development. It's also about making sure we offer a wide range of opportunities for people of all music genres in our community. And we know that there are those who love symphony music. We know there's those who love oompa music. We know there's those who love blues music, jazz, the list can go on. And this certainly appeals to the generally younger demographic, but I know there's been older people there as well enjoying it. And we want to make sure that those who are into the electronic music scene have those opportunities as well.
Okay, there's no further comments. I just quickly want to say that I remember sitting here last year saying that we can't stop them from running their festival. They have the opportunity to do it. The only thing we can do is try to regulate the noise. And I think we've done the job that we are elected to do here, and that staff took direction and did an amazing job coming up with this solution that we have and coming up with the right technology in order to make this successful in our community with the location that they have at Bingaman's. So I think that it's important for us to continue, and I think that they've shown, it's already been said, they've been shown to be responsive to what our concerns are and what the neighbors' concerns are. And so I think we should give them that chance to proceed with their festival. So with that, we're going to take the amendment first, and that amendment is to go to 9 p.m. on June the 6th. Sure, we can have a recorded vote. So we're dealing right now with the exemption only going to 9 p.m. on the Thursday. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's defeated. So now we'll deal with the motion as put forward by staff, and that's moved by Councillor Schneider. Recorded vote. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much for coming in, and we look forward to the same the progress and the same results from last year. So thank you. All right, well, let's take a 2-minute break, and then we'll come back, and I mean 2 minutes. 2-minute break. All right, let's get started. Or let's reconvene, I guess is the right word. So we are now on the water leak adjustment policy, and Mr. Saleh is here and will give us a little presentation.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks. To improve customer experience and encourage water conservation through the timely repair of leaks, staff are recommending that the water leak adjustment policy be approved. Throughout the year, we receive calls from customers who have experienced a high bill as a result of a leak. Possible reasons for a leak may include malfunctioning toilets, water softeners, leaking taps inside or outside, reverse osmosis units, irrigation systems, and ruptured pipes. Customers are understandably upset when they receive a high water bill. Their frustration is compounded by the fact that the city is not able to offer any form of financial relief other than providing payment arrangements, so giving them more time to make a payment, and it could be up to 6 months to up to 1 year. Both staff and customers spend a considerable amount of time dealing with the situation. So the recommended policy has two main objectives. The first one is to facilitate an effective and efficient means to provide limited financial relief to our customers. Number two is to encourage the water conservation through timely repairs of leaks. The scope and eligibility requirements for a credit adjustment is highlighted within the policy, so I won't go through that. So although the policy provides some financial relief, it still holds the customer accountable and responsible to fix leaks in their home. There will be a formal application process under this policy. The policy will require leaks to be repaired and proof of repair to be submitted to qualify for a leak adjustment credit. Staff are also currently investigating options to detect water leaks quickly. These options include attaching a consumption monitoring device to the water meter, and we're also looking at reviewing the feasibility of automated meter reading using existing street lighting infrastructure. Staff will be bringing forward a report at a future date which will identify possible options for council related to automated meter reading. With respect to the policy itself, if approved, it is expected the policy would be in effect and applicable to customers who have experienced leaks after January 1st, 2019, so anytime during the year, this year, 2019. From our research, other municipalities such as Cambridge, London, and Hamilton have implemented a similar policy, and it has been very effective at improving the overall customer experience. So this concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. There is a number of questions for you, so we will start with Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair Galloway-Seelock, and thanks, Ollie, for coming in. And my question is dealing with, do you feel that this policy will, in the long run, save time and money?
Definitely. I think when customers feel that they've been listened to and we have some sympathy for the situation, the phone calls are much easier. I think they feel comfort and the city is doing something, and we feel out their pain. So definitely this will save time for staff.
Okay.
And customers too, right? They call us a number of times.
One other thing, my other last question that I have. Are we looking at any other third-party technology to complement our systems, to somehow double-check or anything like that, just so we have, I don't know, like another point of view that's not our system, so that the public can realize what if our systems are working or not?
So just to clarify, are you talking about the meter accuracy?
Yeah. Like, is there another third-party type? I'm just throwing this out there. I don't know whether there is a technology there that can collaborate with what we offer, so that way we can, once we give this a reprieve, like that's it. This is our evidence to showcase that we have accurate readings.
Yeah. I'll just make a comment, and then Greg can maybe help me out too. The meters are accurate, right? And the option for customers is to get the meters tested, and that's one option where we test the meter for accuracy. So with a third party, so we can do that.
It is a third party that
it can be a third party to test the meter. So I'll let Greg speak to a little bit more if you.
That's really what I was going to say, that there is, if someone wants to dispute the meter, then there is a fee, and then if they want to dispute that, if there is any inaccuracy in the reading, but we take it back to our bench and we test it, and they can come in and witness us test it, or we send it out to a third party to get it tested. So people do have that option.
Okay. All right. That's right. When the time's appropriate, I'm prepared to move this, and I just want to, can I make just a quick comment?
How about you wait?
What's that?
How about you wait?
You make me wait?
I'll put you first for comment.
Okay.
All right, now, we have a lot of questions still, so Councillor Davey.
Thank you. First, I just want to say I really appreciate the whole section in the back of this report talking about the whole streetlight infrastructure and the sensors. That will probably save a whole bunch of questions I won't ask any. I wait that report. My first question is just looking at how this is going to be funded. It just says from within the existing water and sewer utility budgets. So essentially, this is just going to come from, it's almost like an insurance policy that all the residents are going to pay for a little bit of it, but those that need to make a claim, it will come from the general revenues?
There is a budget allocation for this to support this policy and the enterprise budgets, the water and sewer budgets. There's
a separate budget specifically for this policy?
That's correct.
When did we implement that?
It was
it
January?
Was it?
January.
Okay, so it was in the budget
Yeah.
then. Okay, sorry. It's $50,000. Might have missed that. Okay, sorry, that helps. So the other question I had looking at how people apply, I've had residents have an issue where they would have an erroneous, well, they would say an erroneous bill. Having said that, my understanding is there's never been, and maybe you can confirm this, there's never been a water meter that we've found to actually be faulty. Is that correct?
We haven't found, yes, that's correct.
Okay, so there's never, okay.
Yeah.
So what I've had some residents claim is that they couldn't, they had a bill that was really high, and they couldn't identify a leak anywhere.
That's correct.
So how are we going to handle that? Because part of the proof, that the burden of the resident is to prove that they found a leak and they repaired it. What if they can't find the leak? And what if their bill normalizes after that? Can they still take advantage of this program?
So we have an option of going through the appeal process, right? So that's one. We need to see that they've done some due diligence. They've brought a plumber in, they've looked for the leak, they have tried to find the leak and fix it, right? Okay. If they can't find it, at least they've done the due diligence. If they do that, they will go to the appeal process and we'll consider it.
Okay, so even if it can't be found, if their water usage does normalize after that, they could still potentially utilize this program?
They have to go to the appeal process, and we have to look at all the facts.
Through the appeal process, okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair Galloway-Sealock. Saleh, I hope that your job gets a little bit easier after this is implemented. I know that one of my first experiences coming on council was with a leaking toilet that the person was so upset about.
Yes.
But yes, I'm sure you get that all the time. I'm just curious, though, why is the recommendation to pay up to 50% of the excess rather than pay up to 100%, even if it's just for the 2 months that you're, the maximum of 2 months?
So I think what we try to do is put some responsibility to the owner too, to fix the leak, and to at least to be fair to all the ratepayers, not just the ones who experience the leak. So we try to balance that. Other comparable municipalities have done something similar and have similar programs where they have some responsibility and accountability on the homeowner.
Okay. Well, I think, though, that the responsibility on the homeowner is to get the repair done, which is costly, and to then prove that they did the repair, which is, a bit of a pain. So I'm just curious if we can look for future years to consider a higher percentage, if not 100%, of a maximum of 2 months' worth of excessive billing once they notice it. And up to I like the $1,000 maximum as well, but I'm just curious what you think the ramifications might be of that.
I think we may have to increase the budget, right? And at this time, we don't know what our experience is going to be. So this is year one, and we haven't been tracking high leaks, high water consumption for all like what we've been receiving. That's the one thing we need to do. So once we have a process in place, we'll be tracking all these leaks and seeing what the experience is in terms of how much we are paying out.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to see that come back, once you have the tracking, to see what the impact might be financially if we were to offer a more, I think it would be even more fair, especially when these leaks can happen with people not even realizing that it's happening. Thank you.
Councillor Michaud?
Yes, thank you. Just with regards to the definition of residential, properties classified as residential but not including multiple units, our development throughout the city and the region is really going up in multiple units, and I'm wondering why they can't be included in this.
So I think most of the calls we receive are from residential homeowners. Like I said previously, that the experience has been with other municipalities is mostly residential. Most of the policies apply to residential. The bigger the commercial, industrial, for example, have energy management programs. They're able to afford it more.
But I'm speaking specifically on residential multiple units, like townhome developments. That's what we're talking. That's what I'm asking.
With 1 meter.
Yeah.
So in those, if they're 1 meter supplying multiple residential units, they're not able to identify who gets the refund or who gets the credit.
Okay, it would be the corporation that gets the credit.
Right.
Which is they're all the owners of the corporation. They're members of the corporation. I'm just questioning that. That's all.
So yeah, the condominium corporation gets yes. I'm just saying that based on the experience we haven't received many calls from condominium corporations. It's mostly residential.
Okay.
I think that's the reason it's here.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sola.
Yeah, on that last point, you're talking single-family dwellings. Residential can be in both. You're hearing comments from single-family dwellings.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know why it wouldn't apply to multiple. Residential is the key word, residential.
As long as they're identified as residential, we would.
Yeah, but
right.
A condo can be residential.
But it's...
Well, no, I don't want to use my time. Okay. Yeah. I have a couple of questions. You're going to save time. Do you have any idea the amount of person hours that are put into this on an annual basis?
We get approximately 10 calls per month on this, on high water queue.
So are we going to save a staff person here?
We won't save a staff person, no.
Half a person?
I don't know.
We always have to look in that area. Now, I read in the paper a figure of 50,000. I didn't see that anywhere here. Is that the right figure?
Sorry, say that again?
I said I read in the newspaper a figure of $50,000.
Yes, that's the budget. That's the budget that's been allocated.
That's the budget that we approved.
Yes.
And none of us know that we approved it.
That's in the financial implications. Yes.
I'm going to ask you this question. I know, and I know what the answer is. Is it ever possible for a meter to be wrong?
In our experience, no. Most meters are accurate. They work on positive displacement, so the water has to pass through it for it to register.
Yeah. What is the fee if someone really wants to have their meter tested? What is the fee?
I believe it's around $240 or so.
200. So that's out of the question.
It's refundable if it's found faulty.
Okay, but that makes it pretty tough for anybody to challenge that. So, when you talk about, I was trying to figure out how this really works. When you talk about a year's average, how do you work that out? What year is that based on? Is that on a calendar year? Is it on the previous 12 months? I've looked at my usage for the last 5 years. I tried to get a feeling for how you would deal with this.
We'll probably look at the same time period, so probably previous 12 months.
Okay, so it's the same time period in which it's in which the incident has now occurred. Right. Yeah. Okay, and I can see how it's going to work, and I, from my experience, I know the amount of time you must spend on this, and it will be helpful to our customers. My biggest concern here is, when are we going to get to automated meter readings? 25 years ago, there was a limited system in place where we were reading meters, water meters. And people could see on a daily basis their consumption.
Ms. McGoldrick?
Pardon?
Ms. McGoldrick would like to respond.
Yeah, so through you, Chair, to answer Councillor Gazzola's question, Councillor Gazzola is correct. The automated metering reading technology on water meters have been around for many years. It is a capital investment in terms of installing the infrastructure, the radios, to be able to capture those reads. And further, by leveraging our street network, and which will result in cost savings down the road, we need to do some testing around that. What the timing constraint is around the gas meters. So currently there's no meters, gas meters, or automated meter readings for gas meters in Canada. We are currently waiting for those meters to be certified and for us to be able to use that technology, because part of the savings in the business case is around eliminating the meter readers, the manual meter reading, which is done in tandem with the meter and the gas. And so we are hopeful that we will see that technology come into Canada be certified by Measurements Canada by late 2019.
I've got to respond. It is 2019 now. It is I know that 25 years ago, a group from the city went to Buffalo to see their gas meter reading. So it's been in place. I'm confounded by the way things have advanced, and yet we're back. We're so far back on this that. I mean, once we get to automatic meter reading, a lot of these problems go away. So where am I going to? Here's a real test. Am I going to see it in my lifetime?
I don't think anyone can answer that.
Where does it sit on the city's plans?
Ms. McGoldrick?
So through the chair, we do have a partnership with staff from utilities, from revenue, and from our information technology folks looking at this. They did just look to receive an update from Measurements Canada in terms of the gas metering. We were told late 2019, and so the team is putting together a project schedule to look at how we could roll it out once that technology is available, and further looking at potentially doing some testing on the water meter side with our street light. So it is a project that is on staff's radar and are looking to advance, and we anticipate likely late 2019, early 2020, bringing forward additional information to council once we know that on the gas side that Measurements Canada is ready to go.
All right, we're going go-hung on street lights, but water, gas. I mean, Hydro have it now, right? Hydro have, and if I have a problem with Hydro, I can see exactly what day of the week that all the grandchildren came over. I can tell that. I should be able to do the same with water. So, I'll make my quick. I have no problem with this program. It's actually a good customer service program. We're talking about customer service because people get very frustrated, and I can imagine at the other end of the phone line. But we really need to get into the 20th century and then even get to the 21st.
Mayor Verbanovic?
Well, just very quickly, and thanks for indulging me, because I know what Councilor Zola is talking about because I happened to be wearing a different hat at that time as one of the staff people in IT when we went down on that trip to Buffalo remember Ed Kovacs was on it and some other IT staff where we witnessed them using that technology back then, and it's sort of been a bit of a sticking point, I think, for both of us, that for whatever reason that technology hasn't been available in Canada, and so anything we can do to accelerate that would be appreciated.
Councillor Singh?
Yeah, thank you. And it's good to have that history to realize that certain technologies have been available, and it's unfortunate that we haven't been able to have the same access. But we have to go beyond of just supportive commentary and saying that's great, let's get it done. I think we have to set a hard expectation to our staff that this does need to be implemented at its earliest. And through Ms. McGoldrick, I know this is sounding more like a comment, but question is in there. Through Ms. McGoldrick, if you're stating that in 2019 we'll have a better understanding if this new technology would be certified, could we expect that there will be a report coming back to committee and council, irrespective of what the results are, so that we know exactly where it's at, and then we can take further steps if it's not feasible, that it would be coming anytime soon?
Ms. McGoldrick?
So through the chair, our plan in terms of a report back has been to report back in early 2020. We might be able to advance that to late 2019. We did hear that we anticipate a Measurements Canada certification in December of 2019, which is why we were looking at the early 2020 timeline. However, we could look to see if we could advance that as much as possible.
I think that would be good because, again, although it would not be incorporated into the budget, we can start having a forward perspective of if that is the new advent that could be accessible. So I would encourage that. And quickly, I think, again, as earlier has said by numerous colleagues, that this is a great customer service approach, and I see that. But I'm hopeful that this is not going to be a need once we have this new availability of live reading. So through Councillor Davies' question, the fact that the budget implication was already incorporated, that's not from the tax base, that's from the utility itself.
That's correct, yes.
So that cost is shared amongst all the users.
The water utility.
From the water utility, right. Now, have we considered perhaps reducing the cost to reassess the meter? And when someone calls and says, okay, it could be a faulty meter, as opposed to relying more heavily on this type of a relief. So in case that, if it's shown that the meter isn't faulty, the accountability does need to be ultimately rest on the customer. I just would hate to see that because this is now available, the number of requests are more than we can really accommodate.
Are you talking about testing the meter?
Well, testing, I'm talking about, because we're providing this relief, and where others may easily absorb that cost of the increase, where if there was due to issue of whatever, on their own part, or some aspect of faulty equipment. My concern is, are we expecting more requests coming forward beyond what we normally, accustomed to, now that this is available?
For the chair, we have no idea. Like I think we need to experience 1 year. We put a budget amount in, and based on the experience of 1 year, we can go back and revise the budget.
Okay, so we're not anticipating going beyond the budget. So
no.
Okay, all right. Well, I think this is a good test and see approach, and again, going back, it is a prudent customer service strategy, but I think we need to rely on other available options at the earliest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is all the questions that we have for you. So this has been moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Councillor Ioannidis, you want to make a comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair Galloway-Suliak. I think if anyone knows anything about the leaks, it'd be Mr. Solly. He's dealt with a lot of these over the years, and I know I personally dealt with him, and he's been quite amazing. So I do appreciate you thinking out of the toilet bowl on this one. So I'm very confident that I think this will be a success, and I just want to thank Mr. Solly and the KU team as well for putting forward something that I think will be beneficial to our customers.
Are there any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. All right, next we are on to the FCM and GMF feasibility study with Mr. Sloan and Mr. Satnick. They're going to give us a 10-minute presentation. 10 minutes or less, right? Okay, go ahead.
Greetings, member of committee. Yes, Derek from S2E Technologies and I will do a tag team presentation. We'll try and keep it to the 10 minutes or under. For a few members of new members of council, I'm Brandon Sloan, manager of long range and policy planning, and this is a very important topic to me, and I'm sure it is to you. Our goal is for a complete and healthy Kitchener, and part of that includes a more sustainable community. So as we strive over the next 5, 10, 20 years to try and achieve that goal, we're going to need to take some steps forward, and sometimes we may even have to take some bold steps. Today what we have before you is a feasibility study that's for your information. We also have some recommendation about some of the next steps. So net zero, essentially that what we're talking about is where a building, or in the case of the study, a neighborhood, consumes as much energy as it produces or produces as much as it consumes. Typically what you would see are energy efficient construction, and you may have some energy generation like solar panels or access to a shared system like district energy. We're seeing it in many forms throughout North America: townhouses, single detached dwellings in Guelph, office buildings, and there's a new development that's under construction in London, Ontario, Sifton West 5, and I'd say unfortunately for us, we're starting to fall behind on what other municipalities are achieving in terms of environmental performance. So we have a bit of a video to show you of this. So how do we get this type of development happening in Kitchener? How do we work towards net zero or net zero ready? So we need to know a little bit more about the technical aspects, the financial aspects, and the policies or process that are needed. So we partnered with the City of London, other municipalities on a Green Municipal Fund application and grant. And Derek's here to give us a summary of the feasibility study that is just coming out now.
Thank you, Brandon, and thank you, councillors, for entertaining us today, too. This has been a dear passion of mine. It's a pleasure to be here with two hats on today. I'm wearing a national hat with this study, working with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and the Green Municipal Fund, but I also live in Kitchener, and I consider some of you to be friends. Welcome to council, those of you who are new since the last time I had the privilege of delegating here. This study has been a 4-year effort. It's taken 2 years to create it and then 2 years to deliver it, and now we're on the receiving end, and it's sort of maturing into conclusions we can do something about. There's a lot of content in these slides and a lot more in the report. We don't have time for it today, unfortunately, so I'm going to skip to what I hope is the most important one. All of this is available in the handouts you've been given, and more of it is available later. You can see there's a lot of information here, so forgive me for skipping, but the one that we want to draw your attention to is this particular slide. The report itself is 450 pages, and across those pages, you can imagine there's quite a lot of content. The 3 key topics we addressed were technical, financial, and process. And in those, there's questions that we asked. So technical, we were looking at 8 different case studies, 2 per city. You just saw a video on one of our case studies. The 2 per city was basically so we could step outside of the projects themselves and not get sucked into a project, but think about the process they're all going through. And then from a technical point of view, we created a whole chunk of this report to summarize all the technologies that might be used in different contexts to build and achieve net zero construction. So that's one chunk of the report, is how do you physically build these things technically. I'm an engineer, I've done these things before, I knew that wasn't going to be the problem. So the next chunk of the report is financial. And in all 8 studies, how is it that you can get from the technical to the somebody has to pay for this discussion, and talk about the different roles for the different parties and learn something meaningful about how you finance these projects. There's a big chunk of the report on that. The final chunk of the report is to take all 8 case studies through shadow approval processes, mock trial approvals. And we did that twice in Kitchener. And learned a number of things from all 8 of these studies and wrote up a number of conclusions. And then trended all the conclusions together. We tested those conclusions on another 40 cities across Canada. We looked at almost 200 programs, incentive programs and other policy programs that each of those cities has, and looked for trends and themes, and came up with these 7. And that these really are the key things that any city should be thinking about doing if they wish to enable net zero energy construction. Now, I'm a business guy, so my approach to all of this was less about the city side of this and more about the how do I make this work side. And actually, the West 5 project is one of mine, and I can say the developer there is very happy about the margins they're making on their project. And the City of London has contributed in some intelligent ways to that project, but we've been careful to measure all of this discussion to make sure it comes back as a net positive to the municipality, that this isn't the municipality throwing money after a project that should not be asking for help. It's very much a question of where does the city fit in, or the municipality fit in, what is a role that they can take that is meaningful, that enables this type of activity, but that is meaningful and creates returns for the municipality. It might be slow returns, but there should at least be a return. So the 7 things on here, I'm proud to say Kitchener is actually a really fantastic example across all the cities we looked at across Canada. It was a hometown proud moment for me. If you look at the second row particularly, those are policy examples. And Kitchener has what I would personally pin as the best-in-class example across Canada of how you deal with the middle box distributed energy. If you take a look at Kitchener's Municipal Access Agreement program, we can ask you the question period if you'd like to know about that. But it's a very meaningful way to address all of the challenges that come up technically and from policy points of view with how you enable a private developer to put a pipe under a public street, a public right-of-way, and connect 2 buildings and share their energy, which is a very important technical thing that needs to be done if you're going to achieve net zero energy. So Kitchener actually is in a very good position with some of those policies. Community Improvement Plan, I'm also proud to say, Kitchener's Community Improvement Plan for energy and water efficiency in land and buildings. Some of you may remember that discussion a few years ago. Right now it's dormant, but it is the template that we landed on across Canada as the best example of policy from which to build, which means Kitchener's in a fantastic place to take that tool, which exists on your shelf, and build with it and turn it into something that can enable these kinds of discussions further. The rest of these conclusions, I hope, speak for themselves. We could talk about any of them at length, but there's this trend from starting in the top row with what you have and what you know, working through some policy changes that are meaningful, which Brandon can talk about at length, and then celebrating those successes, which is usually what we're terrible at. We can celebrate good projects from time to time, but for the most part, we get stuck in the technical details and forget how to explain it for normal people. And we don't celebrate. We don't tell people the good stories that we have to tell. So these were the 7 conclusions. You're welcome to ask anything you like about all of them. I apologize that it seems like we're jumping on the tips of icebergs here. There's a lot more to say, but Kitchener looks really good in this national study, so I'm proud to share that today, at least anyway.
So for Kitchener, we have the policies. I included in the package policies that we've had about this topic for 35 years. We have the community improvement plan. We have partnerships. We have targets. We own land. We're experiencing a lot of development. So let's do it. And so the report recommendation before you is in 3 parts. The first is to receive this for information, provide it to interested stakeholders like our development industry and other interest groups. The second one is, the city has the Brom Yards, the region has the multimodal hub. We have a lot of development like Station Park, the former Schneider site. There's a lot of opportunities to find a case study. We're about to do some new neighborhood plans. It's great to start it from the ground up. And the third one is about ease of implementation. So if a developer comes to us, we want to make sure that the details of our process, like when engineering and planning and building and others are reviewing it, that we can get through the system efficiently. And so we're here for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We do have some questions. We'll start with Councillor Marsh.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I was just curious, first of all, about the community improvement plan. Has there been effort in the past for us to try to use that for funding?
Sure, through the chair, we created the community improvement plan about almost 9 years ago now, and it did have a funded program at the time. So the city previously had some money through the LEAF program, and there was a funded program that we targeted new residential development for new single detached at the time, or semis, that if they built to a LEED standard, then they would get a credit or an incentive.
Okay. Well, I'm excited to see this move forward, and I'd like to see us continue to find new ways to incorporate more opportunities for private development to be incentivized for more net zero energy developments. I'm also wondering about do we have any other community improvement plans that are not being used right now? I know, of course, about the downtown one, but yeah, tell me more. Are there others that we need to look at?
Through the chair, I would suggest this is the most pertinent one. As Derek mentioned, it's the model template being used in this study, but it's unfunded. And so if there is something that council wants to target in the future for energy, water, perhaps even waste, we don't need to go through the whole system to create a plan. We have the plan, so we just need the program. As for other ones, there is a lot of work that we've used on the downtown ones. There's a few that have expired. So we had an adaptive reuse community improvement plan, but that's expired.
Okay.
Brownfield is probably one of our most popular ones in the past.
Yeah. So you use it or lose it? Is that, or do we have to renew this before a given time period?
Through the chair, the way that we wrote the community improvement plan is that it exists as the framework, so it never expires. But within the umbrella of the plan, you can insert programs. And so the program for the LEED new construction has expired.
Okay. All right. Well, this is exciting, and at the appropriate time, I'd like to move the recommendation.
Sounds good. Okay, Mayor Verbanovic.
Well, thank you, and I too want to thank you for being here today and bringing this forward. I guess in a sense, it's a little bit of a sneak peek to formally presenting the report next Friday. Next Friday, we'll be launching this report. I'll be going down to London from an FCM perspective. So if anybody's interested in going down early in the morning on Friday to get a peek at the development, or we're welcome to join me. My question to you is, in terms of sort of moving some of this stuff along, particularly from an environmental and a net zero point of view, I know that some cities like Vancouver and so on, I think, have done things like fast track approval processes and so on if you meet certain environmental standards and so on. Did you look at that at all as part of this, as a way to try to incentivize those kinds of initiatives in communities in Ontario?
Through the chair, we looked at a total of just over 40 cities and just over 180 programs, those being some examples that are noteworthy, yes. And we were looking for themes. First, we were looking for any kind of model that cities are familiar with using, and they might be used on brownfields or other things, and not necessarily on net zero buildings or anything that sounds like a net zero building, but we were looking for tools that cities are capable of using and have experience in using. And then we spent quite a bit of time interviewing those cities to ask what the experience was and what were the successful and not successful lessons learned, seeing equal weight in both, but there's things we wish to recommend people avoid and things we wish to recommend they pursue. And all of that is in the report. The last appendix in the report is a template community improvement plan, which is an adaptation of the Kitchener Community Improvement Plan. And there are appendices as sample programs in that draft community improvement plan, which suggests 7 incentive programs, one of which is this kind of an incentive program. It's an advanced queuing program is what we would call it. And there's discussion about what they cost and how you recover the funds from those things, what kind of timelines are reasonable, process discussion. There's a whole lot of detail in there. But yes, we did look at that. We found that to be a meaningful example.
Just to supplement that, it is something that we've talked about from time to time as to different priorities. I think so far we haven't found too much advantage to looking at that, because then you're presupposing other requirements or needs to look at in the process. So it hasn't been a main option that we've explored. There's some of the other incentive programs, or even just moving this towards something that we would like to see in all of our developments.
Okay, great, thank you. And it was interesting to me, and I don't know if this sort of happened by happenstance or that 2 of the cities in this grouping were Kingston and us, basically being the only 2 cities in Ontario that still own their own gas company. Mm-hmm. Was that part of the factor in terms of how this grouping came together?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting observation. We were sort of smiling on that as well. The 4 cities that were contributing actively into this study were London, Kingston, Kitchener, and Waterloo. The reason those 4 were selected is because they're deemed from outside as good examples of mid-sized growing Canadian municipalities. Kingston and London, particularly being the research centers where a lot of private industry will test new concepts like drive-thrus or cell phones or credit cards, or there's a good history of marketing efforts that have existed there, and Kitchener and Waterloo for lots of other creativity and proactivity that we carry in our reputation, but yet not seen as a Toronto that has resources no one can mirror, not seen as a Guelph with some of the different creativity that gets expressed. They're good examples of standard Canadian cities. If these 4 cities say it's a good idea, it's pretty darn likely to be a good idea. So we were really proud that those 4 cities were chosen for that reason, and that is the reason. And then we took 2 case studies from each and sort of dove in and looked at details together.
And last but not least, can you remind Council what the amount of the FCM grant was that
certainly
we received for this?
Yeah, through the chair, the total budget of the study was broken down into 5 parts. The FCM contribution, I believe, was $88,000, and the 4 cities contributed $9,000 per year, 2 years each.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. Just a couple questions. First off, you showed I think it was the West 5 development. You did mention that the developer of that site was, you said, happy with the margins that are there. Is there like a consolidated or benchmarked example of how much it costs versus traditional development, how much more it costs to make a development? Obviously, it's going to vary in the size of the building, the nature of the building, et cetera, but how much more it costs to make that building net zero? Is there like a percentage formula that
Yeah, so through the chair, it varies by building type and by scale, of course, but generally speaking, if we talk about homes, it's going to be different than commercial buildings, but homes, we can talk about 5 to 10% premium costs. There are ways to make sure that is very reasonable and you can get a good solid return on those numbers. Depends on who owns the return, of course, and whether the builder is building and selling or whether there's a long-term asset holder involved or a condo corp. I mean, it varies widely, but that's where the business model plays more of a determining factor. But in terms of capital, 5 to 10% premium on a building of almost any shape and form is a very reasonable buffer to sort of work with. And then that depends, again, on the extent and nature of the technology you would use. So if we look at Evolve 1 in Waterloo as the most close, or the most physically proximate example to here, they have some specific advantages on their site which they captured, and that affected their budget very positively. The West 5 site has chosen to focus on things like insulation and solar, and because that made sense in that site. But Chapter 3 of the report is an extensive exploration of technologies you'd use for different places to try to hit those targets of keeping it to as close as possible to no more than a 5% premium.
Okay, that's a much better figure than I would have guessed. It's encouraging.
Surprises a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. My only other question is, and if you can answer in broad terms, what are the advantages of discrete, like site-specific net zero versus centralized energy production?
Sure. It gets complicated quickly. It's an engineering discussion, but broadly speaking, it has to do with lost energy and transmission. And if we can keep everything physically close to where it is used, you don't lose very much. And if you can use the ultimate example of this would be if you used DC lighting from a solar panel in a very small physical place where you've got very few conversion technologies from the solar panel to the place you use the energy, being the DC light. The opposite example would be the centralized nuclear plant where you've got many cities connected and there's long wires between everything.
Because the wires themselves consume some of that energy getting to the...
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for this presentation. I have a couple of questions. Where does bonusing relate to incentives? Because we already have bonusing in place, right? So how does one...
Through the chair. Sure, through the chair, that's a very good question. So right now, in terms of bonusing for additional height or development, we have that in place in downtown, and there's only a very limited community benefits you can use. What's coming before council in April, so this is a good connection, is broader community benefits for bonusing downtown. And so there are several benefits listed that connect exactly to this. So energy performance of buildings is something that if that is achieved certain criteria, then there could be bonusing available. So that's actually coming in April.
Okay. My other question was, as I look at the policies, you said they were introduced 35 years ago?
Through the chair, yes, there was 1984, so I think I included that as Appendix A.
Okay.
So those policies.
Just about the policies, I see a number of buzzwords that appear. So it talks about work toward, encourage, promote, consider increasing, continue to investigate, develop a program. At what stage do we make these requirements rather than just thoughts?
Yeah, through the chair, I think that is the exact crux of the situation, and I think that's the leadership that we're looking for from council. So there are challenges between required versus promote or encourage. When we prepared our new official plan several years ago, council had a discussion about green development standards and moving forward, and there was a lot of support for that. I think now that we have this study, we know more about the technology and the costs and the process, so I think that's what we're looking for partly today.
Okay.
So if I can comment briefly from a national perspective, this is a constant debate that keeps surfacing in different expression all over the place, very contextualized obviously, but I'll just take my Kitchener hat off for the moment and speak only nationally. The number of players who are invested in this discussion are many, and they have competing interests. But one of the things that comes up on both sides of this always is this tension between a noble intention and a let's just go make everybody do this thing we all know is the right thing to do, and then the sort of industry limitations on the other end of that where we still need to have enough competent trades to go and deliver. So there is a stage in the natural life cycle of these programs where you want to be promoting, not requiring. And the real debate is trying to learn when have we passed from that stage into the next, where we can start saying there are actually enough people in industry who are local and credible and know how to do this, and if we were to require it, we know people could deliver and there won't be lots of insurance claims, and we've studied the science out of this, we know we're not going to make big mistakes. That's the debate, and that's the hard part, is where are we in the middle of this journey? So right now, net zero, I would suggest, is in that sensitive middle somewhere, and we don't really know where. We know from programs like Energy Star that we have a dearth of professionals who can go test buildings and tell you how much they leak or how well they perform. We've got lots of people who can do energy audits. So that part of the industry is in a healthy state right now. That's a very good thing. We know contractors are very mature around some topics like good windows or insulation, or these types of things are getting better. Solar panels were doing really, really, really well until we had lots of arguments at the provincial level, and now we've had a lot of that skill evaporate and move to other markets. So we have to be kind of careful and sensitive to watching these things. But that's where you get into the nuances. There's a difference between net zero ready and net zero. And right now, the building code committees at the provincial levels in most of the provinces across Canada are all talking about net zero by some date in the future as a code issue. So 2030 is a big date that's floating around most of Canada right now as a code issue, that the building code people at the provincial level will deal with this for us. So I would suggest that the lesson that I pulled from this report as one of the authors leading the team was that there is a role for municipalities to play, and presently it's an economic development opportunity to focus on developing local skill ahead of 2030. But doing that as a proactive thing, not as a requiring kind of a thing. And doing that with some clever programs that create returns for the city, not throwing money at stuff, but being smart about what they encourage and how they encourage it. Celebrating those wins, building local economy, creating local excitement. There's a dearth of topics here as well. But right now, while it's on the radar for the code people for 2030, is the time to start celebrating our local leaders and multiplying them and encouraging and building them.
Okay. I have one last question. When we talk about net zero energy construction, where does destruction fit into this analysis? Like, we don't talk about, the cost of bringing down a building, the cost of manufacturing the products that are going to be used in that new build. So how does that factor into net zero?
Yes, so through the chair. That's a hard topic for me. It is an externality to the report. The report was saying if there's going to be development, how do we make it the best development? Your question is more a should there be development kind of a question. It's a very good question. It's a very hard one to deal with fully. It's outside of the scope of this report, I would suggest.
Okay, just for clarification, it's not so much, question in my mind of should we do development or not, is should we try to retrofit and include existing buildings into the development that's coming forward, right? I mean, I think there are creative ways that it could be done without, saying we don't want development, right? And that's not where I'm headed with that question.
Thank you. Through the chair, yeah, I understand now. I'm sorry. Yes, that becomes a business case question. So with the development pool that I work with, that comes up case by case, and I would suggest the way we tried to write this report is agnostic of that. New development would just comprehensively include all of those considerations, and we would hope that any programs that are adapted or adopted would have similar thinking behind them, that they would be favorable towards adaptive reuse. Because of the city partners that were involved, it basically is always a challenge to find land. So that comes up all the time. How do we make best use of land that's already there?
Mr. Reedman, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, through the chair. So one of the locations we've identified is around King and Victoria, and there's a lot of adaptive reuse buildings that have been developed in that area, and there is potential advantages of them hooking into a district energy system if one of those is created in that area. It tends to be a little bit cheaper for energy costs to go through that system than to provide their own heating and cooling on their own. So there could be opportunities for others to tie in if that's one of the locations that's developed further.
All right, Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, you talk about three cornerstones here: technical, financial, and process. I'm finding not a great deal of financial information. One of the questions that was asked as to what that study cost. Is it correct that if we put everything together, it was a $160,000 study?
Through the chair, yes.
And what did we get out of that study?
Yeah, typical engineering reports we could compare to for this would run at about $1,000 a page. We got 450 pages. Really well leveraged, deep expert pool, and 40 cities and 200 programs worth of an assessment. Big study. It is purely a research exercise. There are no physical developments that have come from this project so far.
To get into this program, there's undoubtedly going to have to be financial incentives. Is that right? So it's going to cost us something, but there's no talk about that.
Through the chair, I think that where we're at is at the point of where Councillor Chapman said, is do we need to go down the road of lots of incentives, or has this become more of something that we're trying to shoot for? We've had an incentive program before. It may be needed because, as Derek said, we're going towards 2030. So to bridge that gap, there may be some incentive to look at. Obviously, if there was an interest from the development community and from council, we would look at and target what the best one would be. And Derek can speak to it again if needed, but he indicated that a lot of the ones that are provided in the research and in the study are to be of positive aspect to the city as well. They're not to be a a financial drain on the city.
That's the intent. It should all be self-recovering.
That's encouraging. You keep talking about a community improvement plan that's in place. Can you expand on that? There's no funding for it. Is anybody aware of it?
Through the chair, yet we do have a community improvement plan that was approved by council.
When?
In 2010.
Yeah.
It had an approved funded program to start with. That program expired, but the plan still exists. And so we would not have to go through the process of getting the province, consulting with the province and the community. We have it. So all we are looking for at some point in time, if we wanted to go down the incentive road, is a funded program.
Yeah. What does that plan that we have in place give us? I'm not sure that I clearly understand. You say it's in place. What is it? What is it saving us, or?
Through the chair, it provides the framework of targeting a specific objective and through a certain geography, which we put the whole city, that allows the municipality to do an incentive or a funding program without it necessarily being considered financial bonusing under the Municipal Act.
And it covers the entire city.
That's correct.
We have a few CIPs that cover certain areas of the city. You're saying this is one that's on the shelf that covers the entire city, and we've never done anything with it.
That's almost exactly correct, other than we did have some that were awarded funding for that original program.
Now, can you tell me, for people on the street understanding, what exactly are you asking council to approve today? You talk about a report, I understand, but the report hasn't even been tabled yet. So we really can't approve that report, right? So what are you asking council for today?
Through the chair, what we're doing is bringing this study and a summary of the study for information so that you're aware. As the mayor indicated, there's going to be a formal announcement that's coming within the next 2 weeks about this study. So we wanted to make sure, since we were one of the participants and partners in it, that council was aware of this study. We're also, as part of that information, we're also then going to share the study once it is published and launched to the development industry, environmental interest groups, members of the public through our website, or anyone else that members of council wish to share it with. The second part of the recommendation is to not just ignore the study and put it on a shelf. It's that we have so many opportunities right now. The momentum has all been building. So let's do something. Let's take the next step. And so we're recommending that in one of the possibilities we have or more, that we look at a specific business case or target. So maybe we pick a new neighborhood we're about to plan, and we say that's one of our objectives. Let's study it for net zero. The third one is to make sure that our processes are efficient, so that if a development comes in and wants to do this, and it's an environmental and economic and social benefit, that they can move efficiently through the process.
The second one is, I'd like to have a little more understanding of what we are approving. We're just approving a generality that this is a good thing and we need to look at it. Is that it? But we're not. We have a few ideas on the table, but we're not really approving anything. We're just saying, now's the time, let's look.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Singh?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is I think, phenomenal step forward. You have to have bold ideas when you want to create, the community that we would aspire to have for future generations. But obviously, we always have very supportive and positive language through our planning policies or development policies, but sometimes they don't get leveraged on. And I think from previous questions that got focused on the community improvement plan that's citywide, but hasn't had that much uptake. What are we incorporating in here, or the effort will be incorporated in this strategy that we would have more immediate uptake on this? So my question is, are we focusing on the smaller development also, rather than the larger where it takes time. It really has to be built into the business case. You never know because they have a lot more interest in mind. But when the smaller projects, it makes sense for them to do, and that can be incorporated far quicker.
I think through the chair, the content of the report is pretty flexible and pretty broadly applied. So my hope is first that council will be encouraged that you already have some of the key pillars of this report implemented locally and available, such as the municipal access service agreement and these kinds of tools. So what Brandon's team would, I think, most benefit from is just being able to remind local industry that this is true. And so when he talks about promoting this to local environmental interest groups and the development industry, really that's what I'm hearing, is that there's people who just need to know that this is true, that Kitchener is a good place that really, as I look and compare the other cities that were involved, Kitchener is open for business. A lot of these other places have a lot to learn quickly before they can say the same thing. So that's just positive because it's positive. And so bragging about that is completely appropriate, I would say. The next step is you really ultimately need a landowner to come forward and express interest and want to move. And as soon as that happens, all the content of the study is universally applicable. And the projects that we were working at ranged from 7 to 70 acres in size. Just in the 8 case studies here, and the network that represented was quite a bit broader. So there really is no minimum or maximum size to apply this. There are certain efficiencies.
No, it's not the minimum or maximum thing. Are we incentivizing enough the smaller projects?
Sure. Well, so the incentive discussion will be one that I would suggest would need to mature over the next effort that Brandon's team will have to look at. And for that to be a healthy and fruitful discussion, you need to have a couple of cases to examine in a little more detail. So if his team was given some kind of a nod to talk to local development industry, get them excited and see who comes forward, and then run them through some kind of process to figure out what sort of effort the city might invest that would be a reasonable use of city resources. I think that could be a very healthy process, and I think there's lots of stuff in the report to arm that. It just, the discussion has to start.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I realize this is very early stages, and it's really what comes out of this. And it's very difficult to challenge or question what's being proposed because it just makes sense. It's the right thing to do. It's what we need to aspire to accomplish within the development parameters. But again, the comment is more to our staff as well of what we need to try to focus on. And one last thing, and I don't know if this will be part of the review forward. What would the strategy be to best articulate it into the development community as to the simplest form, and going back that we can cater to someone that may not have the strong technical skills to really understand what can come out of this form of development.
Just through the chair, one of the aspects we would do would be to make this information available and talk to our Waterloo Region Home Builders Liaison Committee, and they can spread the word and the information from there. There's also some others on our contact list to look at. From the smaller individual home standpoint, we have myself and a few others have been to Guelph to look at the net zero homes that Reed's Heritage has done. And so there's information we can connect people with as well. And we're always open for other forums or formats of how you think we should go about that as well.
Would we be looking at getting some feedback as we get the customer at the counter, using every opportunity that we have, that one-to-one FaceTime, and then you get a variety, diversity of persons that have the development interest, as opposed to one aspect like the Home Builders Association or the Waterloo Region, the association that you referenced that may cater on to a only particular type or size.
Through the chair, yes, we would like to see that.
Glad to hear. Thank you.
Okay, that's all the questions that we have for you, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your presentation. We'll now move into comments. Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair Galloway Seelock. I'm excited to see this here, and if there's a team that can get this accomplished, it's Mr. Satnick and Mr. Sloan, because I can really appreciate, in particular, Mr. Satnick's approach, and having worked with him with Solar City back in the days of pioneering solar power. This man knows his business case, and I appreciate that perspective more than anything, and I think we will be able to leverage the gap to 2030 and not push anyone in or force anyone to. I think that's the best approach, and I know Mr. Sloan is passionate about this and is eager to get this moving forward, and I think we will be able to ease some of Mr. Councillor Singh's concerns And just even the top of my head, I think we can even pair this with other organizations, like let's say KHI, Kitchener Housing Inc., or even Habitat for Humanity or something. Like, I think we can pair this with some other social initiatives. So I'm more than confident in the capability of that you offer and that you're bringing, and I'm looking forward to moving forward with this.
Thank you very much for your comments. There are no further comments, so we'll take the vote. It's been moved by Councillor Marsh. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Next, we are going to deal with the conditions of service for the City of Kitchener natural gas distribution system. And staff are here just for questions. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Gazzola.
My question actually is this something new?
Through the chair, it's really not new. We're just formalizing it into a written document to give the residents a consistent approach so they know what we're doing.
Okay, so it's business as usual. Has anything happened in the past resulting in the necessity to go in this direction?
Through the chair, we've had a number of people call to inquire about what our policies are and they would like to see a document or something written. So this is a document for customer service to provide better customer service, so they can go to our website to look at how to do things, as well as for contractors who are new coming into Kitchener as well. So we're hoping it's going to reduce staff time, and we can push people to our website.
Okay, on the second page of the report, you talk about this being totally the mandate of the Director of Utilities. Is it not something that Council is being asked to approve?
Through the chair, yes, Council is being asked to approve the document.
So any changes down the road would be also approved by Council?
Through the chair, what we're thinking, if there are minor changes, they would be through myself to approve. If there's something minor in nature, the rates and fees, they go through the budget process, but anything minor would be at my...
But a major change should be approved by Council.
Through the chair, yes, a major change would be.
Okay, because it says here, any major changes to this document will be communicated to Council.
Okay.
It will be approved by Council.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, there appears to be no further questions. Does someone want to move this? Moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We are going to take a 5-minute break so that we can be refreshed to deal with the Leisure Facilities Master Plan. We'll get started in 1 minute. Everyone listened. All right, on to our last item on the agenda today, and that's the 2019 Leisure Facilities Master Plan. And I will turn it over to Kim Kugler to introduce staff and make a 10-minute presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair Galloway Sealock, members of council, and Mayor Vermanick. Staff are here today to present the 2019 Leisure Facilities Master Plan, which was last updated in 2013. Since then, staff have been working hard to advance the priorities that were identified in the previous plan. Some of the work that was underway or completed since 2013 includes the expansion of Doon Pioneer Park Community Centre, the implementation of Love My Hood strategy, the Office of Strategic Partnerships was established, the naming of the RBJ Schlegel Park was achieved through a sponsorship and naming opportunity, and there's been approved partnership underway with the Waterloo Regional District School Board to build a new community centre in Huron-Brigadoon. Just before introducing the slides today, I'd really like to acknowledge and thank the project team, the support staff, as well as the community for their hard work and their expertise in their contributions towards the development of this plan. Today, our project manager, Helena Folds, is here. She's going to take us through the details provided within the 2019 Leisure Facilities Master Plan. So, Helena?
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Chair Galloway Sealock and members of council. I'd like to begin by identifying what the Leisure Facilities Master Plan is. The LFMP is a strategic document that includes 18 recommendations to support the city's commitment to providing high-quality recreation facilities and services that meet the needs of our community. The master plan contains important information like demographic data, facility utilization, the results of the public engagement campaign, as well as information about emerging recreation trends. This plan is updated every 5 years, and we do this to ensure that the recreation priorities align with the city's strategic objectives. This 2019 plan focuses on the need to invest in and maintain in our existing recreation infrastructure, as well as the need to continue building strong public-private partnerships. A detailed review of citywide trails and parks was not included within the scope of this project. Further work will be done later on in 2020 through the Cycling and Trails Master Plan and the Open Spaces Strategy. And I'd just like to take a minute. There is a correction to the staff report on page 11. I believe it says that the Open Spaces Strategy will be complete in 2020. That's incorrect. The work will begin in 2020, and it's scheduled for completion in 2021. One of the 18 recommendations outlined in the Leisure Facilities Master Plan includes a prioritized list of indoor and outdoor recreation facilities that are eligible for development charge funding, and I'll speak to this part of the project later on in the presentation. The LFMP took approximately 10 months to complete, and it included a comprehensive engagement process that was divided into 2 phases. First, the project team engaged with key stakeholders, which included staff and user groups like neighborhood associations and affiliated sport groups. We heard from 45 user groups, which represents just over 10,000 Kitchener residents who participate in registered sport programs. The purpose of the stakeholder engagement was to help staff understand the strengths, the opportunities, and challenges associated with Kitchener's recreation facilities, And the information collected during this phase was used to help shape the areas of focus for the broader public engagement campaign. Information during this phase was collected through one-on-one interviews with members of council, the city's advisory committees, and staff, as well as online surveys, 2 staff workshops, and 3 user group workshops. The second part of the engagement was open to the general public. The campaign we launched was called Have a Say Where You Play, and it began in November 2018 and ran to the end of January 2019. The campaign provided residents with an opportunity to share their input about the places that they use for recreation, for sport, and for well-being. We received just over 1,400 survey responses, and in addition to this, we had many conversations with residents throughout the project, bringing the total number of engaged residents to just over 1,700 people. Staff used a variety of tools during this public engagement campaign, the primary tool being the online survey, where we received 746 responses. We launched the survey on the new Engage Kitchener platform. This platform also included an interactive map where residents could drop a pin on a specific recreation facility and leave a comment about whether or not they liked that facility or if they felt it needed improvement. And on this tool, we received just over 320 comments. Staff also provided a paper version of the survey. It was a condensed version of the online survey, and this was placed at 24 recreation facilities so that residents could fill it in and put it in a drop box at their convenience. We also hired a street team that included 10 members who visited 22 recreation facilities across the city, and these visits were scheduled during prime time hours so that we could have an opportunity to talk with residents who are using our recreation facilities and programs. We promoted the campaign through social media and other marketing tools, as well as spread the word through staff and emails. And finally, we hosted 2 public workshops at the Odds in mid-January of 2019. To ensure that feedback was collected by Kitchener residents, we asked people to provide their postal code. And this was a very important part of the process to ensure that we received feedback not only from across the city, but also specifically from Kitchener residents who contribute to the tax base that fund our recreation facilities. So this map you see here shows each survey response based on postal code. And the areas highlighted in red and yellow indicate a higher number of responses within a specific area. This map shows a fairly good distribution of responses across the city, including the south end where there are fewer rec facilities. So as I mentioned, this project was a 10-month process. We collected a lot of information, and after reviewing all of that data, the information can be distilled down into 6 key themes or key findings, which I'd like to review with you. The first finding is about the quality of the value of our recreation facilities. There's no doubt that residents find significant value in the services that we provide, and this was very clear throughout the entire project. The second theme is related to maintaining and investing in existing recreation facilities. 60% of survey respondents said that they prefer the city invest in existing infrastructure, compared to 40% who said they prefer that the city build new recreation facilities. The third finding is related to residents' preference for multi-use facilities that allow them to participate in multiple programs in one place. Data shows that there's a growing shift away from standalone recreation centers and that there's a need to provide facilities with multiple uses and also facilities that serve multiple generations. The fourth finding is about residents' availability the availability of programming plays a key role in residents' willingness to participate. According to the survey, residents reported that inconvenient program times is the #1 reason that prevents them from participating in recreation programming. And this is not surprising. It aligns with the trend data that shows there's a need for more self-scheduled and unstructured programming that allows people to participate at a time that best suits their lifestyle. Number 5 is about non-traditional funding sources. Ontario municipalities are facing a reality that development charges and tax-supported funds don't cover the increasing costs of building and maintaining recreation facilities, and so the city needs to look to alternate sources like sponsorships and partnerships. Which brings me to the last point, which is that partnerships with school boards and private organizations are extremely important. And this is because it helps distribute the cost of building those facilities and operating the facilities by increasing the overall utilization. I'd like to take a minute now to speak to the connection between the Leisure Facilities Master Plan and the development charges. Development charges can be used to pay for growth-related capital costs to service new development, including indoor and outdoor recreation facilities. It's based on the philosophy that growth should pay for growth. And the LFMP gives us an opportunity to prioritize recreation facilities that are eligible for that DC funding. So today, Council will review the prioritized recreation facilities, and then development charge funding will be allocated based on a discussion that's scheduled for April 1st. It's important to consider that the DC rate will significantly influence the number of projects that the city is able to complete within the time frame of the next DC bylaw. This slide shows staff's recommendation of indoor and outdoor recreation facilities that are eligible for development charge funds. This list was created by staff after a detailed review of all of the data collected throughout the engagement and research parts of this project. Staff used a set of criteria to evaluate each proposed project, and those criteria included community demand, service level and utilization, asset management, and funding sources. Each project was weighted, reviewed, and then discussed by the project team to create this list that you see today. And I do want to draw your attention to the top of the list where it says Huron-Brigadoon Community Center. This is listed as the automatic number 1 priority for indoor recreation that's eligible for DC funding. Council approved this project back in June 2018, and work is already underway with the Waterloo Region District School Board. And it's also important to note that the LFMP includes 17 additional recommendations that are not eligible for development charge funding. The city will continue to explore alternative funding sources and partnerships to ensure that this work is completed. These recommendations will be prioritized and an implementation schedule will be developed. And I'd just like to close by highlighting the next steps related to this project. So today we're here to review the Leisure Facilities Master Plan and the 18 recommendations within it. On April 1st, staff will be back to discuss the development charge rates. The development charge background study and bylaw will be released to the public on April 25th, followed by the passage of that bylaw on June 24th. That concludes the formal presentation. Staff are available here to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. There are a number of questions already in the queue, so let's get that started. First, we have Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair Galloway Seelock, and thank you for the awesome report here. One question I have is, one of the things through the public engagement process is we had questions that the community was looking at more multi-use facilities in particular. Did we have a little bit of a focus in that? In, let's say, we have 2 community centers in one ward that are actually bursting at the seams, or let's say, and then amalgamating into one facility. That way we could save costs. Did we have a look at that at all?
Ms. Kugler? No, sorry, it's me.
Through the chair, we did not ask specific questions about specific facilities. The public engagement gave us an opportunity to get a sense of what those trends are and what further questions we might ask in the future.
Okay. Did we also look at, when we're looking at the recommendations, do we look at population as a factor in some of these recommendations?
Through the chair, yes, we did do a comprehensive review of population, not only at the city level, but we also broke it down into specific areas within the city. The information is in section 2 of the appendix. And yes, the development charge priorities are related by growth, which is based on population.
Okay. My other question too is regards to the development charge. So when we look at the list, I know we've had this conversation. Can you just give me a better understanding of how we're going to fund some of these through the development charges?
Mr. Hagee.
Sure. Through the chair, when council sees the development charge study later, or I guess early next month, it will have the prioritized list. You will see that if we go with the maximum allowed rates, we can fund everything. If council thinks that those rates are too high and starts wanting to charge something less than the maximum rate, we would not be able to have all the DC funding available for all the facilities. But I guess they could be paid for through tax dollars as well. It's just generally they would be paid for through development charges.
Okay, and those are the top 5, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And my last question is in regards, and I know, Helena, you touched upon it, in looking at outside of our DC charges, is there any appetite to further expand on that in looking at private corporations or anything so that some of these things could come to fruition sooner rather than later?
Mr. May.
So through you, Madam Chair, absolutely. As Mr. Hagee indicated, we'll have a better sense once council's had their discussion on the DC rate. But for some projects, a public-private partnership might work. Other projects, we will look for things like the tax base. There are some municipalities looking at special levies, which we want to discuss with council. So there are a variety of options to basically move all of this work forward.
Okay, that sounds great. And when the time's appropriate, I'm prepared to move the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have pretty much everyone ready to speak. So, Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And through the presentation, you outlined extensive public engagement and the responses that we received, the type of responses that we received. I don't know if you can go back to that slide. Is that possible? This one, yes. Did we break that down into, obviously, the facilities master plan outlines some key priorities going forward, into the information that we received that broke it down into where those interests lay, into what's being suggested through the master plan.
So if you look at the survey questions, what we actually did is we asked them to prioritize their top choice of facilities, whether they were indoor or outdoor, and based on the feedback that we received, we used that then to help prioritize the actual facilities.
Okay. No, I just wasn't sure if there was more data available for us to really see exactly how that breakdown came about. But again, if that's how it was compiled, then we'll take the information face value. The other thing is the report does speak, in more encouraging terms that partnerships are good, and we've seen an example of that already. Is there certain more? I wouldn't say it's conditions, but still, are we applying more basis that unless that partnership comes to fruition, we will delay or we will wait until that partnership opportunities arise, especially when it comes to community centers?
Mark?
Through the chair, we are making partnerships a priority for when we develop community centers. For instance, the Rockway Center is still a priority. We're doing that. We're looking at the development with a private partnership. As well as Rosenberg, we are still interested in doing a partnership with the school board in that area down the road with the Waterloo Catholic District School Board. So yes, it is a priority on the development of community centers.
Okay. And how about the indoor facilities? Would that same effort be applied for them as well? If that interest exists or the opportunities exist?
Through you, Chair. Yes, for the indoor facilities, if there is an opportunity for a partner, whether it's public or private, we also continue to have conversations with the school board around expansion. Generally with gymnasiums or sport-friendly, we're looking at a partnership with a high school, and so until one of the high school projects advances, we'll be looking for that, as well as looking at partnerships for outdoor amenities as well, whether it's public spaces and trails connected to the schools or even sports fields. We're still doing partnership with fields on their sites.
That's excellent. And Kim, to be honest, it's almost impossible to foresee that. But just to be able to hear that confidence from staff that that would be applied, that's good for this council and the public to hear. And the later part is for trails, for outside. I'm really glad that trails is a component of this, and the public has shown that interest. But there's difficulties with trails as part of the DCs, so we've heard in the past. Were we focusing on new trails or existing trails as well?
Ryan?
Through you, Madam Chair, for them to be DC funded, they would have to be new trails or enhancing an existing trail due to growth and capacity concerns.
Okay, but we will have further dialogue through the DC review of seeing what areas of the existing infrastructure could still be applied as development is happening in our inner cores, correct?
Yes, so the DC study will not say specific areas or, specific trails that would be done. There would just be an allocation for trails. The larger that allocation is, the more trail work that could be done.
So the same thing goes for item number 5 for outdoor recreational facilities for citywide parks. Those parks already exist, but we can still apply some DC dollars towards them as well?
We can, and yes, and the citywide parks are the 4 large-scale parks in the city, not just parks across the board. But yes, we can spend some DC dollars. It would not be 100% DCs that we would be saying are funding that project, but absolutely we can use DC money to enhance those large parks like Victoria Park, Kiwanis Park.
Okay, it's good to see the broad range that we are looking at, so great, thank you.
Mayor Verbanovich.
Should know better. Well, first of all, I just want to thank Helena and the whole team for the great job that you've done on this document, and I know all of you have put in many hours collectively to get it to where it is and give us a great perspective about where we need to go. So thank you for that. I do want to touch briefly on field space. I know this is a question that probably won't be a surprise to Kim, and it's on particularly in regards to cricket. And I know we're meeting with the cricket group later this week, but wondering if you can talk to me about how we sort of envisage that moving forward, because it is a growing sport throughout our community.
Through you, Chair. So cricket has been identified as an area that we need to bring into the fold, and so as part of the RBJ Schlegel Park, there's been a cricket field identified, and now we're working with some of the cricket organizers to actually look at how we can program that and advance that forward.
Fantastic. Good to hear. I have to say I'm not surprised by the priorities that have been identified in the report. And while there's always, I know some differences of view or thoughts on how things might be prioritized, I think the overall list doesn't surprise me. You've already answered some of my questions around Rockway and the importance of partnerships, not just for that project, but quite frankly for many of these going forward, because I think that is something that we're increasingly going to need to look towards going forward. But the one thing that there has been a change on is in regards to Grand River Park and its relationship to being able to, at least in the early phases, use money that comes to us through the DCs. And so, but I also note in the report that it talks about it continuing, obviously continuing forward and funding being available through other funding sources. So I'm wondering if you can just talk a little bit about that one, because that is one that is important, I think, not only to me but to our whole community, and I want to make sure that it doesn't get lost.
Niall?
Through you, Chair. The Grand River remains a priority, as is noted in the report. When you're prioritising these things, you have to look at what you can and can't achieve. And at the minute, we've got plenty of work to do in trying to build up a vision and a plan for what the Grand River Park would be. And there's some background work that needs to go into that. So at this point, we've got plenty of work to keep us busy. And I'm looking forward to coming back around to this table and sharing what that might be, hopefully later this year.
Fantastic. Other than that, just very quickly, thanks again for all the work that folks have done, and I think this is certainly a step in the right direction, and our challenge will be how to be able to find that right balance in DCs versus capital from current versus partnerships versus lottery tickets that maybe we purchased. No, just kidding on that last one. Thanks.
Councillor Davey?
Thank you. Just a couple questions. First off, is there any limitations in terms of using DC funding when we have if there's a public-private partnership in place? And an example might be if we were building a large indoor facility and we thought it might be prudent to have like a Tim Hortons type of agreement inside that facility. Is there any restrictions?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't believe so. I think we could build something and have like a cafeteria space, and whether that's franchised to, a specific industry or whatever, I think that would be allowed. I can check just to make sure, but I think that would be a normal use of that type of facility.
Okay, notionally in terms of other revenue, I think that's an avenue we should explore because you do have a captive audience there. My other question is on the first page of the staff report where they have the priorities. Is it, I know they're numbered 1 to 5, but is it safe to assume generally that staff thinks these will all be accommodated? In other words, is it worthwhile examining closely the order here, or is staff comfortable that they will all get completed?
Through the chair, I would say the proof will be in the pudding when it comes to how high do the DC rates go. So they are in a prioritized list right now. Under the maximum calculated rates, they could all be funded. If we start going below the maximum rates, they could not be all funded, and the starting point would be knock off, number 5, then number 4, and work our way up. But Council is going to revisit all of that on April the 1st. We will take the recommendation from here as our starting point, but the more detailed, nuanced discussion will be April 1st. Anyway.
Okay, so there's nothing stopping us then from moving this around when this all comes back?
I would say that that's true. If there's something specific that you'd want to move up, it would probably be most appropriate to do it now, but I would suggest we're not 100% locked in to these priorities until we have the discussion on April 1st.
Mr. May would like to add something.
Sure.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I'm not 100% confident that we'll be able to fund all of these. As Mr. Haggie said, it is a question of the rate the council will discuss at a future meeting. So I think you should pay very close attention to the priorities now, and if you want to change them now. What I'll also caution you is they may not actually appear in the 10-year forecast based 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because some issues may have to wait for servicing a property before we can build a facility. So there's no sense putting money in on that project if it has to wait. As just an example. So when Mr. Haggie and his team brings back the 10-year forecast through the DC process, it may not exactly align to the priorities, but I would encourage you to focus on those today.
Okay, in that case, I'm not going to make any motion today. I'm just going to throw it out there to see if it resonates with other members of council, but I'm entirely comfortable with the left side of this. On the right side, I absolutely think trails are important, but they're also much more passive in nature, and I would personally, if it's in order of need versus more standard programming things, I would move trails further down that list and see some of the sports fields come first. As I said, though, I will speak to the members of council before council may ratify this. The only other question I had was on, and forgive me, we bring this up all the time, but the idea of an arena in the south end of the city and possible consolidation. I did notice in the analysis that Kitchen Minor Hockey is requesting more ice time, and we are turning away some non-affiliated groups due to a lack of ice time as well. When would we expect to see more data and context as to whether that's the route we should be going down?
Ms. Kugler?
Through you, Chair. So through this engagement of the user groups, we did come up with feedback from Kitchener-Minor Hockey that they believe that they can grow the program by 20 hours. We are trying to focus our energy on, through the business case, to put together one for the rationale of the timing of that arena. So as they need the 20 hours, we need to make sure that the 20 hours, that would kind of fill that Monday to Thursday. But how do we then fill the other envelope of that? And where do we actually balance it out? So we do have groups that are looking for time, but predominantly people are looking for 6 till 9:30, which is very difficult to manage that. And so we're trying to find that balance. And that's why, rather than bringing forward recommendation this time, we really need to spend the time on a business case, understand the demand that's out there, where it is, and how we can create the best use of the facilities.
Okay, and to be clear then, as part of that business case, looking at closing down potentially some older single ice surfaces and looking at a more multi-pad facility.
So through the chair, yes, we would look at potential decommissioning of an existing facility, again, for utilization and going back to that key finding about consolidating our entities. So we'll look at that as well in that work.
Okay, very good. I know there's a lot of people in the queue, so I will not comment. I will just say that I'm very happy with the thoroughness of this report.
Mr. May, did you have something to add?
Just two things. Councillor David, I'd encourage you to look at 11-9. Recommendation number 11 has the specific details and does specifically reference the decommissioning of an existing arena.
If committee would just allow me to jump in for 1 second, because I had a question and recommendation or amendment I wanted to make on the arena specifically. Does anybody have a problem if I jump in now and deal with that? Okay. Just further to what Councillor Davey was saying, I had an opportunity to meet with Kitchener-Minor Hockey, and one of the things that would be a little bit more reassuring is if we put a timeline on that business case, and if that timeline could read 2019 to 2020, so that it's done early on, and then we can look at how we're going to move forward with the arena. So I just look to staff and say, is that something that would be feasible to do in the 2019-2020 timeframe? Mr. May?
Through you, Madam Chair. I don't think it's a question of being feasible. I don't think it's advisable. What we've heard is that Kitchener-Minor Soccer has, Kitchener-Minor Hockey has a need for 20 more hours. We're talking about building a facility of tens of millions of dollars, and so it doesn't make sense at 20 hours. And what we don't want to do is build a business plan now that isn't funded for 5 to 10 years, because we're going to have to redo the business plan all over again. So my suggestion, if you're looking for a firmer commitment, is to say that prior to updating the next LFMP, this work will be done, because it's better quality if we have it closer to the date that we might build.
I hear what you're saying, but I think I might push on this one and try and get the work done. I know that having met with them that they have to, for tournaments, they have to rent ice from Cambridge. They're looking on bringing on sledge hockey and a number of different programs, and they can't expand themselves without further arenas. And so I know that they're hoping for some they want to be building within the 5-6 year time frame as opposed to 10-year time frame. And I understand that we have to look at it holistically, and so that's why I think we can probably do the business case 2019-2020 and then figure out from there through the budget cycles how we fund that. Is that, I guess I'm just arguing with your point. I actually would like to have somebody, if someone was willing to make that amendment, because I can't from the chair, but if someone would be willing to make that amendment. Okay. Okay, sorry, that's all my time for now. I'm moving on. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair Galloway-Seelock. First, I just want to commend staff on a great report, very clear and thorough. And I love also the photos. The photos just kill me. Love them. I do want to know about on page, where is it now? Page 15, the population stats that I know you took from another source. This is not our staff's work, but it might just be my aging eyes, but I don't see a difference in the graphs from 2018 to 2028. And I'm wondering if that's just a typo, or are we actually thinking that the age, are we all actually projecting that the ages projected are going to remain the same? So people are moving, or I don't know, like, help me understand these graphs. Page 15.
15 of the report.
There are 3 graphs.
The document, not the staff report of the actual document.
They look identical to me. But anyway, maybe I should have asked that ahead of time. But if you could maybe look into that, and perhaps we can, because I'm not planning on moving anytime soon, and I bet that a lot of people aren't planning on, moving. I think it might just be a typo. But anyway, I'm curious about that. I'm also curious about the population growth trends for the area in the downtown. On page 14, figure 2, we only have a couple thousand people moving into the downtown over the next 10 years, according to this graph, and I question that, because we know thousands of new units are coming online, and they're approved, they're happening, so certainly they'll be filled with individuals. So I just think that when we're looking at our leisure facilities master plan and projecting the needs based on numbers of people in the different areas, I think we need to be a little more careful about what data we're using and whether it's accurate or not. I really am pleased with the recommendations. However, I think that we need to be careful, be mindful of capitalizing on those partnerships. They're going to be key going forward, because we need to meet the needs of the growing population in the downtown neighborhoods and the downtown core. They're going to be busting at the seams looking for places to use rec facilities, and I'm hoping that we can really capitalize again on those partnerships. For example, when we see new developments that are offering potential space for meeting space in the downtown, I'd like us to find a budget for operating dollars to make sure that we can optimize those partnerships. Yeah, so that's, sorry if that's more of a, I guess that's a comment more than a question. I'm just
Do you want her to answer? Do you want her to answer some of the earlier questions that you had?
Sure. Any answers so far?
Through you, Madam Chair. I can speak to the source of the population demographic data comes from the Region of Waterloo's population forecast. And yes, the colors are a little difficult to see on this page here, but it's broken down by what we call the Leisure Facilities Master Plan Study Area. So we divided the planning communities. We kept them all intact to avoid a crossover and count. And that's where the specific lines and areas come from. But again, they're all based on population growth from the Region of Waterloo's data. And it's population growth, so it doesn't account for people moving in and out of the city. It accounts for strictly just the growth. In terms of your comment around the number of people in the downtown area growing specifically, if you look on page 11 of the appendix, it shows which planning or which neighborhoods are specifically part of that downtown area. So I think it's important for us to look at where those new developments are going up, and if they're not included in one of these specific planning communities, then they wouldn't be counted in that population growth. So it's important to look at that data not just in isolation of the downtown growth, but also the surrounding area, because we know that people are willing to travel to those facilities.
Yeah, I get that, of course, but we are also reducing parking requirements along the LRT track and specifically in the downtown, assuming that people are not going to be owning cars as much. And so we need to assume that these people are needing to get to their places that they're doing their rec and leisure through public transportation. And so that's a whole other factor, because I think up until now we assume people are just driving to where they're going. So again, with the comment, I'm sorry that's not, I do have one more question, but I'm out of time, so I'll cue back in.
All right, next is Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. So just speaking to the graph on page 11, Why the 4 columns? Is there some priority demonstrated here, or is that just happenstance?
Through your chair, can we just clarify, is it figure 2 on page 14 when you're looking at the bar graph?
Table 1 on page 11.
11 in the report. Not the staff report.
The
actual document.
The actual document, yeah, sorry.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair. No, they're not listed in order of priority. Those were just the planning communities listed out based on the study area. So they're just...
So they could all be under one column. There's nothing that distinguishes one column from the next, like the vertical columns.
No, they're not listed in order of priority.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so the downtown study area is made up of the planning communities that are listed to the left, or to the right of it.
To the right, okay.
Yes.
Just regarding the demographics of the people that were surveyed, you give a great map of where they were located or where they reside based on postal codes. Do you have any other information about socioeconomic status or ages of the people that responded to the survey?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we do have that information. If you give me 1 second, I will flip to it. It's in this document in section 7, which is the public engagement section. So we don't have information specifically about socioeconomic status in terms of the people who responded to the public engagement survey, but we did collect information about the types of households. So we asked on the survey how many people within each age group live in your household, and figure 22 on page 66 speaks to the responses that we received. So, for example, you can see that we received 587 comments from households that have people ages 40 to 49.
Okay, I'll have to have a look at it. Thank you. Another question. So regarding partnerships, there used to be a partnership, from what I understand, with St. John's School. In fact, there's a community room that was built when the school was renovated. Well, that community is now used for classrooms. So how do you ensure, with partnerships of whatever sort, whether it be with the private sector or the public sector, how do you ensure that the city actually has some, I don't know, clout or power over the staying power of these spaces?
Go ahead, Mark.
Through the chair, that's a really good question. We're approaching this from 2 perspectives. On the one instance, Ms. Kugler meets regularly with the administration at the school board. This is mostly the public school board, regarding its joint use and using facility spaces. So that's the one way we continue to work towards work with the school boards. Secondly, staff at the ground level are working closely with the principals, but because we find that it's often the principals who are making those calls, and so we try to build understanding and then try to figure a way that we can get community use of the facilities. We have been successful on a couple of occasions where we've really pushed community need. For instance, at Chicopee, the new Chicopee school that went up, and so we will continue to have dialogue that way.
I mean, I think the city does a good job at accessing schools and other facilities in the community, but it's, when you talk about community space, like a room that's designated a community room that's supposed to serve the larger population, I think that's where my concern is. Like, how do you keep that? Like, does the city just come to a verbal agreement and say, oh yes, your neighborhood associations can use this space? Or is there something more formal that has to happen so that neither party can just suddenly say, oh well, now we need this as a classroom, or we need this as whatever the purpose might be?
Sure, through the chair. We've been working, in instances where we've provided investment into community spaces, we do have a more formalized agreement, which is seen by legal and which has a term. If the community need is still there, then we would ensure that the term is renewed. So there are instances where we do that. Is there something you wanted to include?
Through your chair, I was just going to add that part of formalizing some regular meetings with both boards, and as Mr. Hildebrand alluded to, is that often some of the operational decisions are made at the principal level. So we're really trying to work with the senior staff to actually get the good documentation in there so that they're aware of the agreements and that we can actually do the planning that's needed. As they may have growth in population and other things or other programs they want to offer, giving us the right notice so that we can either engage for expanding out an opportunity or finding a replacement. And that's part of the work that we're really trying to foster in the relationships currently.
Okay. Regarding the list of proposed, is my time up?
It is.
Oh, do you want me to come back?
Well, you can ask one more question. And
Okay, so regarding the projects that are currently on the list to move forward with, I assume some of these or all of these were on the 10-year forecast prior to now, or how does this work? Because I know I've heard lots about the 10-year forecast, and
So through you, Chair, because of the size and the scope of a lot of these projects, they are in the forecast. So when we did the last Leisure Facilities Master Plan in 2013, a number of these facilities were identified. As alluded to by Mr. May earlier, it definitely is about partnerships or infrastructure that's being provided and the timing of when those priorities can actually advance. But we do keep them on that radar and try to look forward so that we can actually make sure that we're growing our facilities with the growth in the community.
And which ones were actually on that previous 10-year forecast?
So on the previous list, it was Doom Pioneer Park Community Center Addition, the new Southwest Community Center, Mill Cortland Community Center, Southwest District Park, the Aquatics, and the Rockway Center, as well as an indoor turf facility. And then on the outdoor side, it was Trails, Southwest District Park, multi-use sport fields, Grand River Park, neighborhood parks, and soccer fields.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. May, you want to add something?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I think the easiest way to think about this, and Mr. Haggie will correct me if I'm wrong, but of the 10 items recommended for priorities within the DC, there was only one that it was not in the 10-year capital forecast previously, and that was the expansion of the Forest Heights Community Center. And just to clarify, while we have a 10-year capital forecast for our recreation projects, we have gotten into updating that every 5 years. So we're doing today, we're updating our Leisure Facilities Master Plan, and then we update our DC bylaw, which basically means any of the items in the second half of the 10-year forecast may be changed. And so it is to ensure that we don't set a priority now, but then we find out 10 years from now, well, it's not a priority anymore, and keep spending the money. So we're in a 5-year cycle where we're continuing to update these priorities.
Like the pool that was supposed to be built in 2016.
So
Just as an example, and
yeah.
it's been pushed back and pushed back and pushed back.
It's a great example, and there are many examples of reports that came out 20 and 30 years ago that committed us to building 10 community centers. And then the neighborhoods get all excited, and then they just get told year after year, it's a delay, it's a delay. And so that's why there's only one new item on this list. It's the expansion of the Forest Heights Community Center, because we don't want to start building community expectations we can't achieve.
Okay. Continuing on, Councillor Gazzola.
Yes, I'd like to learn about the cycle, so I'm going to just start talking about the cycle. In 2005, we did this master plan, which was a 15-year document. And in 2013, halfway through, we updated it. We are now into 2019, so do I consider this as a brand new document to guide us into the next 15 years? Am I right, or am I out of left field again?
Mr. May?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think you should consider this as a long-term priority, very focused on the first 5 years, because in 5 years, we'll do another Leisure Facilities Master Plan update.
Okay, so it's a 5-year, we're now into a 5-year master plan.
That's the new cycle.
Okay,
yes.
now what trumps what? If it's on here, does it automatically get into the DC charges? Does it automatically get into the capital forecast? Those are all different documents, and I'm not sure, as people are asking questions, as to what is clear. So what trumps what?
So good question. Ultimately, it is the 10-year capital forecast that trumps all, because it will build your priorities here today, as well as any decisions you make in terms of the DC funding. And so this is one input into the DC process, which is an input into the capital forecast.
Okay, if it gets on here, it still has to pass the test to get on those other lists.
Just because it gets on here does not mean it will make the 10-year capital forecast.
My next question deals with when are we expecting council to formally approve this new 5-year document?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the first recommendation is to refer the 18 recommendations to the business plan, and so that's what we did last time we did the Leisure Facilities Master Plan update, and then to recommend the priorities, and so the next council meeting.
So you intend to have council certify this on April the 1st?
If that's the next council meeting.
Why would we not wait until after the DC plans are solidified?
So through you, Madam Chair, this is the process, this is the exact process we followed last time with what I would say is significant success, because we need very clear priorities from council. It can't be left up to staff to think, well, I think the mayor liked Grand River Park, so I better put that at the top of the list. And that's why this specific list has been made, and it has served us very well over the past term of council when on a number of occasions someone else tried to add something new. I was able to pull this list out and say, council, you've said these are your priorities.
Very good. But we're not dealing with monopoly money here. We're dealing with real dollars. And to make decisions like this, we have to see real dollars and see how things fit together. So how can we approve something today that we don't know is going to fit? My only question is why do we not wait until June when we approve the DC charges to officially approve this with council?
So through you, Madam Chair, this is the exact same process we followed last time, and it was very successful. This is to understand from your perspective, when you look at community needs, the research and analysis, what are the priorities for the community? After that time, you'll have that discussion as a part of the DC review in terms of what can and cannot be funded.
You talked earlier, someone talked about priority listings and weightings and all that. Is all that information here somewhere that I missed it? Can I see what all that criteria is?
So through you, Madam Chair, I believe that it's listed in the report in terms of what we looked at when setting these criteria.
So it's all there?
I believe so.
If I haven't seen it, I've missed it. Okay. I have a number of minor questions based on these reports, not on the book itself. Okay. On 11.6, we talk about aware visitors. Well, who are aware visitors? 23, the bulk of those online comments are from aware visitors.
Through you, Madam Chair, Aware Visitors refers to the Engage Kitchener platform, and 2,300 is the number of people who visited that site, but not necessarily the number of people who completed the survey.
But were they dealing with this report, or were they visiting for any reason?
They were visiting the specific page that was asking for feedback about the Leisure Facilities Master Plan.
All right. On 11.14, we talk about Well, first, I wanted one on the swimming pools. The swimming pool shows that where they're fully used. Okay, what is that telling me? Does that tell me that we need more swimming pools? It just shows that availability, use is using almost 100% of availability. That doesn't necessarily tell me that we're short swimming pools.
Through you, Chair. So one of the pieces that we do is that we look at utilization. That tells one part of the story. And then in addition to looking at utilization, we look at desired need as far as surveying users that are actually registering for programs. We also look at the programs that are advanced and sold out very quickly, and we can't offer another program because we don't have the time or the opportunity to actually offer it. And then also we go to public feedback and the need and the desire for people to actually enroll either themselves or their family members in swimming programs.
Okay, desired needs and necessities.
Councillor Gazzola, your time's up. Can you keep back in?
Pardon?
Do you have just one more question or a few more?
No, I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Galloway Seelock. Thanks for this report. It's exciting to see the priorities and how we're reacting to them. I just have a question a little bit outside of this, but have we or would we, in terms of partnerships, ever consider partnering with one of our neighboring cities on projects? I know we're looking at developing a strategy for the replacement of Budd Park, and just down the road from Budd Park, there's some available land in Cambridge that the city of Cambridge passed up on for their multiplex. Is that something we may approach Cambridge and say, would you like to go on this together? I know we already own land in Cambridge for the Dune Valley Golf Course, but really thinking outside the box, if, other situations too, if there's a facility in Waterloo that needs upgrading that Kitchener uses, or vice versa, would we consider going to them and splitting the costs and getting a bigger bang for our buck?
So through you, Chair, the answer is yes. So we have, for example, right now, the City of Kitchener actually partners with Wilfrid Laurier for access to their pool. So that's where a lot of our sport groups actually compete out of. So a joint collaboration with both the City of Kitchener and the City of Waterloo helped with some capital investment at the pool to maintain that facility. In addition to it, when we were looking at a site for the twin pads back in 2005, we actually looked to some of the development that was happening outside of the city, and we did go to the partners within Waterloo and Wilmot at the time to look at what opportunities might be there, and we actually came to council for that and that opportunity to look at it. We do actually engage with the municipalities as well as the school boards and the schools that are across border to see what opportunities are there for things that might be a multi-use or have large shared users, and we do look for those opportunities, and if we have those, we'll bring those forward as options.
Okay, it's great. I just think that land at Conestoga College and the cost of that would be very beneficial if we partnered in it, because it would be a great economic benefit to both cities. So would appreciate that being looked into. Thanks.
All right. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. Just a question with 11.1 on the report. It's prioritized, these lists here. So trails you've got up at number 1, and then it's the sports fields, RBJ, Schlegel Park, but then sports field general number 4. What's the difference?
So through you, Chair, the difference is that the Schlegel property is actually the fields that are in the capital forecast that we're aiming to have completed and open for 2020. So we wanted to make sure that that capital that's allocated there stays in place. And then the general fields would be then for the additional growth that would be required in the years ahead.
Okay, so if this is prioritized on the list, it is? Is that like trails, this is prioritized, or is it just on there? Because it says it is prioritized, this list, right? So I would like to see the sports field general moved up a bit. I think that the soccer clubs and other clubs are looking kind of are short of playing fields, if you will. I think I'd like to see that moved up a bit, maybe in front of the neighborhood parks and playgrounds. And the trails I'd like to see as is, because it kind of falls in line with our cycling and walking plan that we've got going. So I would really like to see continued focus on the trails. But this is a fantastic report. Well done by everyone. Thank you.
Okay, there's still 4 more people who want to ask questions for a second round, and I'm just going to quickly ask one question because the mayor touched on the cricket pitch, which is really important to make sure that we get that in here, and it wasn't necessarily mentioned, so he got confirmation on that. We dealt with the arena already. So the last question that I have is with respect to the Huron Natural Area. We have a master plan that is almost 20 years old, and so I'm just wondering if one of the recommendations in here could be to update the Huron Natural Area Master Plan. Niall?
Through you, Madam Chair. Within the table, you'll see item number 5 on the outdoor recreation side of things does address Huron Natural Area and citywide parks, but we will be looking at how the process for the management plan updates goes as part of the open space strategy, which will be starting next year.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you. That's all my questions. So we'll move for second round questions. Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair Galloway. Seelock. I guess the question I have is, and this is something I've mentioned offline to Mr. May and Mr. Chapman, and noticing the theme around here about being partnerships and everything else. It seems to be a focus around here. So the question I'm asking is, Section 5 is related to partnerships. So how do we move that forward? Is it through just the business plan, or is it, because I think where it stands here, it seems like it's at the bottom of the list, and I would like to see it like 1A or 1B, or 1B as to whatever the list is, because that seems to me that would satisfy the appetite of many members here of council.
So you're just talking with regards to the sections in the...
Page, sorry.
Page 76.
1110. So section 5, partnerships. There's a section there all on partnerships and the 18
And so you're
recommendations.
suggesting that that whole section be moved up in front of some of the other sections?
I think it should be parallel with others, because I think it's a need that this council's been asking.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure we were clear on what you were asking.
So through you, Chair, so the way that the sections are laid out in the recommendations on 11.8 through 11.9, those are not based on priority by location of 1, 2, 3, or in that order. They were actually just allocated into common theme areas, so one is not more dominant than the other.
Okay. So in other words, if we add in addition to this, we can make this more of a priority, or are we waiting for the business plan?
Mr. May?
So through you, Madam Chair, I'm not sure I exactly understand what you're saying, but I think it's important to note that we have 4 specific recommendations on partnerships. What's actually more important is that staff is just very clear in council's direction, and we have been over the past 2 terms, that what you want is partnerships. We started with the Office of Strategic Partnerships. When we had the opportunity to partner on the Huron Brigadoon Community Center, we did. The Rosenberg Community Center is looking at a partnership with a school. So it's actually a way of thinking. I think there was a time when building standalone community centers was, for one reason or another, a good idea. I think what we've heard from the community and we see in budgets is that it's not a good idea to continue to build these standalone community centers. We need to expand what we have or partner for the others.
Okay. And my concern here is when I look at these partnerships, in particular, when I look at Rockway, I would like to see Forest Heights Community Center be involved with that. And I know we've had 8 years of looking at that as a possibility. So I would like to see that move forward, and I would like more reassurances that there will be staff time and commitment to that. So I don't want to change anything on the list. I think what staff has done is bang on. So my concern is I just want to have a bit of comfortability knowing that if I can bring other partners to the table, that there will be some resources that, that our staff will be able to execute on.
So through you, Madam Chair, I can tell you that Rockway over the next several years will move forward. There were some confidential issues that had to be dealt with. We're at a point where staff are very excited to start to engage in that project and get it back up and running.
Okay, but that didn't answer my question. If I was to bring significant resources to, let's say, Move Forest Heights Community Center, will there be staff commitment to moving that up on the list if it's outside of the capital forecast?
So through you, Madam Chair, that's exactly what we did with the Huron Brigadoon expansion, and that's what we'll do. When there are good partnership opportunities, we'll bring them to council and find ways to make them happen.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Singh.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm just trying to get a little better understanding of the process. So the priority lists are really focused on the update on the DCs. And when you see item number 3 for outdoor recreational facilities for neighborhood parks and playgrounds, and we're dealing with new subdivisions, aren't those going to happen irrespective of where it's placed on priority?
Niall?
Through you, Madam Chair. The way we currently work those is the city actually works with the developer to build those facilities. If the money's not there, then we could see a return back to how it was a number of years ago, where we actually had a significant lag between a development being complete and the park being built in that development.
So the park would come after the development's complete?
Correct.
Oh, okay. And are there avenues that we could either partner with the developer or work with the developer outside of just the DCs, getting monies to the DCs when dealing with new parks and playgrounds and new subdivision?
So I think the time is opportune to look at that. I think we can certainly start those conversations with both the Development Services Review that's ongoing and the Open Space Strategy that will start next year, and look at different models and different opportunities for doing so. But certainly the current way in which we do things, we would need development charge contributions to come in to deliver those parks.
And I appreciate that, and that's why I question that now, though, by council prioritizing this list in such a way and allocating the importance to the DC dollars for the parks and being number 3. Does that deviate staff's commitment to look at that, or that will happen irrespective, and that will just offload some of the stresses on DC and help prioritize those dollars to something else, which is my assumption, but...
So through the chair, certainly if there is a developer that wanted to engage in discussions around enhancements, partnerships, we certainly would like to engage in those conversations and are open to that. We know we've had developers come forward with different ideas and have looked at different ways to engage the community. And so, similar to what Mr. May has said, we would certainly be open to having those discussions.
So again, I think we're discussing two different things. I'm not necessarily talking about, conversations where, they can entertain to us. I'm asking of reviews through the development process where we imply explicit expectations beyond the monies that are coming through development.
Go ahead.
So through you, Chair, that would be related to the standards that we set for parks and kind of those minimum amenity pieces. So we would be looking to do that policy type standards through a strategy such as the open space strategy, as well as through the requirements that we would set through subdivision agreements.
And I would hope that we are looking at implying those.
So through the open space strategy, we will be looking at what an appropriate standard is for parks, both new and existing, and council will have an opportunity to weigh in on what that looks like. And then through, we know we engage regularly on conversations around how we can look at enhanced parks through a development process. Most recently, council may recall the privately owned, publicly accessible park. So looking for those conversations and engaging in those conversations are certainly a course of business.
Okay, so I look forward to seeing how that review goes through the process. And if we are successful in having some of that stresses relieved through the neighborhood parks, can I suggest, and I don't know if that would require council direction or not, that some of that relief be applied towards the district parks. Simply so because the district parks are representative of the entire community. They touch 5 wards where they are, and then of course the neighboring neighborhoods and wards as well. And that would be, I think, some greater importance applied to that area, which is kind of bottom of the run at this point. So more a comment more than anything else. If staff want to comment on that, you're welcome to. The 37 seconds.
So I'd actually appreciate if you could clarify what you were just asking for, Councillor Singh.
So my question re-explain it quickly. So my question was, are we looking at ways to encourage developers to come to the table with additional investments to neighborhood parks? From staff, what I heard was that is the case, that through the development review process, that is something that's an ongoing discussion. That automatically would relieve the requirement, the number of dollars that are required from the DCs towards the neighborhood parks. If that were to happen through the development process, the monies that we save that are not necessarily required towards the parks, could we relay them towards district parks instead at a later time as what comes out of the development review process?
So through you, Chair, we could certainly look at applying any potential savings. I would caution that whether those savings would actually be realized. Typically, the city would identify a minimum standard in which a developer would need to maintain, and that's where the development charge portion of the funding would go towards. If a developer wished to enhance that, they would do so at their own cost. And so that's setting that standard is important, but it would be kind of above that threshold of what that minimum, where we would be applying those DC funding towards. So I'm not sure that savings would actually be realized. I think where we might actually have a better opportunity to realize savings are partnerships such as specific elements in parks, looking at things that really are important to potential sponsors or individuals coming forward, whether it be the development community or others, where they want to see improvements in the park, are willing to put dollars to that might offset the city contribution.
Okay.
Thank you. Up next is Councillor Marsh.
Thank you. Couple of questions. Just, I noted that one of the recommendations is to come up with a future replacement of the Bud Park Sport Campus because we have a limited time period. Do we have a timeline on when? Is there a publicly known timeline about when we won't have use of that space anymore?
Through you, Chair. At this point, there is not a timeline, but understanding the size and the scope of Bud Park, it's really important to make sure that we have something so that if there's an opportunity for the employment lands to be used for a large employer, that we have a strategy that we can actually handle that within a 2-year window.
Okay. And so since it's at or above capacity right now, when we build RBJ Schlegel, the indoor turf and the outdoor sports fields, will that be seen as something that will we need to look at making something that's even bigger than Bud Park? I guess my question is there an option or a possibility that we can have 2 turf fields inside at the RBJ Schlegel indoor turf?
So the size of the indoor turf that we're looking at until we get to that engagement piece is larger than what we have now at Bud Park. We're looking at a similar spec to what's out at RIM, so that from a comparison, you would actually be able to play more activities in one time slot.
So it would be like 4 mini sports fields rather than the 3?
On the indoor, it would be 3.
It would be 3. Okay. And then I'm just curious about the ramifications if we were to move trails anywhere, as was suggested earlier by Councillor Davey. Would that put in jeopardy the implementation of some of the pending recommendations from the Cycling and Trails Master Plan that's being developed?
Go ahead, Niall.
I can take a crack at that one through you, Madam Chair. Theoretically, yes. So the Cycling and Trails Master Plan hasn't paved out a course of where the priorities will be or what those individual implementation pieces would be through that strategy. But this would be one of the pots of money that would be available to support the implementation of the Trails and Cycling Master Plan. So if the pot was decreased or if it was lower down on a priority list, then that might have an impact to what we can achieve in the early implementation of that plan when it comes to fruition.
Okay. All right, thank you. I mean, for myself, I'm comfortable with where Trails lands now, and I don't know if it would be worth at all, given that there is a real interest in partnerships around the table, would it be worth putting partnerships on this list for potential DC charge additions that would take into account potential partnerships that emerge that are not specific yet?
Ryan?
I'll take a stab. I would say no. One of the things that council will have to do as part of the DC process is say that they have the intent to build all of the things that are here. And so the development industry could take umbrage at us putting something on that we don't really know what it's going to look like or whatever. And as we've said in the past, as opportunities have come forward, we have fast-tracked them so that they can be done.
Okay, and so is this list, are we looking at numbering the number of things? Like, are we going to get really specific before the end of June as to exactly the number or not?
Do you mean dollar amount? Or
dollar amounts and number of new sports fields, number of existing sports fields that will be upgraded, number of all of these things.
So through the discussion on April 1st, we will definitely be coming back with the dollar amounts of each of the different items, and council will have an idea of the relative costs and priorities and determine that then. As far as some of that other detail, I don't have that, but I imagine my colleagues here could easily provide, like how big the pool is, or like, I'm assuming you're talking about like how many lanes would that pool be, how many fields would it be, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, how many, I wasn't worried about how many lanes, but maybe we should be, but I was thinking more about, how many kilometers of trail, how many sports fields, how many neighborhood parks that are, and I guess my final question is, when we look at this list later, will we be understanding that all of this will be realized within that 5-year window of time, or will it just be plans in place by the end of that 5-year window? So
I will tell you this. All of this will not be done in 5 years, just like all of the list from last time was not completed in 5 years. Those are the priorities that we will be working on as the funds become available, and honestly, just some of it is work plan. We can't turn around and build a pool tomorrow, even if we had all of the money. It's still a multi-year process. We may be able to do a bunch of trail work pretty quickly because that doesn't take the same kind of planning. But we will prioritize them as part of the DC process, put them in the budget as we believe they can actually be accomplished. As one of the things that we've had a problem with in the past is we've put a big dollar amount and we haven't had the planning work. We haven't had money for the planning work. So it looks like something's getting built in 2023, but we haven't started the project yet. So through this DC study, we're being a whole lot more measured at how we're doing things and having money for the planning stage, for the site prep, for the, whatever. That sort of thing.
Thank you.
Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. First, I don't feel I have the knowledge or the history to be able to comment on these facilities that are being proposed and prioritized here. But I do want to ask, there are neighborhoods that don't have community space. Is there any thought in the future of providing space, and I don't say multi-million-dollar community centers, but community space that gives a sense of belonging, right? We talk about changing demographics, we talk about precarious employment, various socioeconomic categories, and in some neighborhoods there's absolutely no place to go to. And yes, we can say, well, they can travel there, they can travel over here, But is there, it's fine to grow these huge community centers, but sometimes it's also valuable to have, community space within active communities where people can meet and gather. So is there anything in the forecast along those lines?
So through you, Chair, one of the pieces that's in the business plan is that we continue to work on partnerships with other private and public facilities. And so that is actually one of the ones that actually falls into the portfolio of sport to work on some of those relationships. So we've actually embarked in reaching out to a number of churches and other private entities like some of the Legion Halls to find out what availability they might have. If there are some communities that have a need, then we'll work with those communities to find out maybe which of those fit that model of those creative spaces that might be available. There is actually a tool out there now that we're trying to put some of those places onto that came out of the arts community, where people can actually look for creative spaces, and we'll help with some of those pieces. Because again, it's about utilizing inventory that's sitting empty, whether it's a school, a private entity, or our own entity. So how do we actually utilize those? And if there's some areas that need, we'll try and communicate that tool by the end of this year, that people can take a look and see if there's some facilities in their area, or, as you alluded to, rooms or space that they could use for a community gathering.
Okay. And maybe this is to staff, to Dan Chapman, he's not here. Oh dear. Okay, well, anybody can answer this then. We're talking quite freely about public-private partnerships. Can we have a training workshop for this? Because I think, there's a lot behind public-private partnerships that we need to learn before we sort of put this out there, something we're going to run with, and this is the new model we want to work with. And I think we have to distinguish them from public-public partnerships, which, would be schools and maybe the Legion and versus public-private. So I don't know how this would have to come to happen, but I'd like to suggest that we organize something along those lines.
We'll look to our Deputy CAO to answer that. Michael,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just before I answer that question, I encourage Councillor Marsh on 11-10, recommendation number 16, specifically speaks to indoor space in the downtown. And I think it's trying to get at exactly what you're saying is we don't always have to build these huge community centers. Let's find spaces that are already there and give better access to them. On the issue of public, you are absolutely right. Most of what we're talking about here are actually public-public partnerships. That just happens to be pretty new for us. So you may think, well, that's something we've always done. It's not. It's relatively new for us. To my knowledge, we only have one public-private partnership where we've been given direction from council, and that is the Rockaway redevelopment. And as that comes forward, it certainly would be your opportunity to raise issues at that time.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Costola.
Couple of quick questions. In the book, there are pictures of the city and with the various areas. If I'm not wrong, those areas are the former 6 wards of the city?
Elena?
I'm just curious as to why is that right? Am I right or no?
Through you, Madam Chair. No, we did not use the ward boundaries to identify the recreation facilities in this master plan. We created what's called the Leisure Facilities Master Plan Study Areas, and we did that with help from our GIS team. So, like I said earlier, we kept all of the planning communities intact to make sure that we did not double count anybody, but it's broken up by northwest, east, and south.
If I look at figure 1 on page 12 or on page 78 or on those appendices, you're telling me those are what?
They do not follow the ward boundaries.
They don't follow the old ward boundaries? Okay, that's fine. I have a question on this part of the report on the indoor turf facilities. Are we short on indoor turf facilities?
Through you, Chair, yes, we are. So the design of what is actually at Bud Park is outdated for the play. We still can use it, but there's a number of programs that can't actually utilize the space. The rink board system is not actually what currently is used in the sport development, and as well as there is some pent-up demand too.
Yeah. This is a theoretical question. Are indoors turfs used primarily for elite athletes or house league recreational athletes?
They're used by both. There still are, so they will run a summer and a winter program. So obviously the winter program runs through the winter months, but it isn't about just the elite athlete training. It's also about recreational training as well.
Is it 50-50 or?
I'd have to actually look at the numbers too.
Okay. My final question, again, I hope somebody can help me answer it. Staff have done a lot of hard work here, talked to a lot of people, done all their homework. They have an excellent document, has a lot of information, and as a result of all your work, you've come up with 18 recommendations. But there's not one price tag to any of your 18 recommendations. How can I be expected to make a logical decision on a report and a piece of work that's going to be somewhat of our guideline and our Bible for the next 5 years at least? And I've been given a menu with no prices on it. How can I vote to support that? I can support as I said, it's a document's been well prepared. It started out well, you built upon it. But how do I move forward?
So through you, Madam Chair, that's exactly why we don't ask Council to approve the LFMP. We don't expect you to approve all 18 recommendations because you need a lot more information on all 18 recommendations, not just financial. And so if you look at the first recommendation, it is that it be received and referred to future budget process and the business planning process. And that is the opportunity where staff will bring specific recommendations forward to Council for you to consideration, where you'll have a lot more information, including financials.
So that's what you're asking me to approve today. No more. You're asking me to approve the first paragraph.
And the second paragraph referring the priorities to the DC process.
I can't do that. Thank you. You've answered my question. Thank you.
I think Ryan wanted to add something.
Sure. I was just going to add about the second paragraph in the chart. That is just setting the priority list for staff. That is not saying we're accomplishing all of these things, but as we move forward in budgets and through the DC process, this will be our starting point for what is in if we're going to do it.
That's good for staff. Are you asking me to approve it?
If you can speak into the microphone.
I'm sorry, I say that is good for staff, but are you asking me to approve that? How can I approve that?
So we're asking that's the prioritized list that when we're putting those documents together, we use to say what would move ahead first as opposed to last. Not saying we are doing all of these in the next 5 years or 10 years.
Okay, thank you. That appears to be all the questions that we have. I grilled you for a good hour there, hour plus. So we have Councillor Ioannidis has moved the recommendation. Councillor Schneider put forward an amendment with regards to recommendation number 11. And then we had some talk around trails and sports fields being switched and neighborhood parks and sports fields general being switched. Is anybody acting on those, or it was just a suggestion? Just a suggestion? Okay. Councillor Gazzola.
No, when you do take the vote, I would like you to break those two. There are two parts to it. I'd like you to break those.
The recommendation?
Yes, and do recorded votes on them.
And what, sorry? Okay, recorded votes. I didn't hear that. Sorry. Okay. Okay, let's move forward then. We have to start with the amendment first. So the amendment is, does everyone remember the amendment? The amendment's with regards to recommendation number 11, just adding a timeline from 2019 to 2020 for that work to be completed. Mayor Verbanovic.
Well, thank you very much. And I guess I'll be honest, I'm struggling a little bit with the notion of putting a time frame on it. And I'll be upfront why. We know that we're not going to get through this list in the next 5 years. And to actually go into a detailed plan, which is going to take a bunch of work in the next year or two, when it's not likely going to get built in the next 5 years because we're not going to get through this list, it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me, because it's work that I think is going to, and maybe staff can correct me if I'm wrong, it's going to be work that's going to need to get to be redone afterwards. I mean, I've been a big supporter, as you know, of investments in both minor hockey and minor soccer, and ensuring that, you know, we have space, particularly for all the kids that want to play. But if through this whole study we've just been able to identify 20 missing hours, I'm just concerned that we're going to go down a path and create work that's only going to need to get redone. So I don't know if that's something that staff can respond to, or...
Mr. May?
Through you, Madam Chair, all I can say is that I share the same concerns.
Yeah, Councillor Davey?
Just on that piece, the difference with this one is that there may be an alternate funding source that could bump it up in priority. And I don't want to, I guess there's no harm in even mentioning it. I look at a facility like Don McLaren Arena, which is along the LRT route, which is high value in terms of high land value. And I don't know what that land value is worth. I don't know if it makes sense for us to consider disposing of that facility and then building a multi-pad arena in the south end. So that's, I think, the urgency, and I guess we've been asking for this sort of information for quite a while now. So it's those sort of, not that specific one, but as an example, that may end up being a better operating model for us, because a newer facility may ultimately be less expensive if there's two pads being serviced by the same number of staff members. I don't know the answers to those questions. So it's only that alternate funding source that I think creates that desire for looking at it sooner than later.
Was there a question in there? Okay. Sorry, I was just Councillor Singh.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I was actually inclined to support your amendment, thinking that...
Councillor Schneider's amendment. I can't move from the chair.
Oh, yes, Councillor Schneider's amendment. That was, as you had encouraged. Thinking that, you know what, it doesn't hurt for us to get some new information and we can deal with it as we choose. But hearing, of course, the mayor articulating some concerns relating to it, and staff reminding again the caution towards a rush, what Councillor Davey has said brings me to pause in that support. Both the mayor and staff have outlined concern for rushing towards a process when there's still a lot of time it would take for us to, get what we want. And my concern is putting forward in that rush process suggestions, like starting to look at closing, our existing facilities, which would obviously affect the core, the two ward councillors around the table, and other areas. Even as an example, the Lions Arena is a single pad ice rink, and I'm concerned to think, would that be on the table as well? I think it needs to be a well-thought process. It needs to be a process that includes extensive community dialogue and discussion before we look at it. So if these are some of the suggestions that may end up being pushed in a rush process, that's not the direction I would want to support or go. And hearing this, I don't think I would be supportive.
Having had the opportunity, there's no one else to speak, so it's going to be my turn. Having had the opportunity to meet with KMHA, they need 20 primetime hours now, not 5 years from now. They can use them now. In 5 years from now, that will only increase. In fact, they have the decreased ability to continue to program any further than what they're at now without needing more ice time. Like I already mentioned, they have to buy ice from Cambridge for their tournaments. They're looking to increase their house league tournaments, their tournament space, their sledge hockey. They're also losing their teens, the teenage age group, because they start at, or the preteens, they start at 10 o'clock at night. And so kids aren't sticking around hockey because it's too late for them to attend. And so these are seriously concerning numbers. I've been asking for years for this just to be put on the capital forecast. And now I'm beyond that. I'm beyond and advocating for something sooner than just getting it on the capital forecast. And I think we need this information in order for us to do that. And I think that realistically we can have staff able to complete the work in 2019 and 2020 so we can legitimately see where we need to go with arenas. I understand that, we've brought on the sports world's twin pad. I've been patient in all of this, and I think it's time now to get that business case done. And it's recognized. If you look at page, just let me find it. One of my tabs. If you look at page 73, arenas come out from community priorities number 4. Number 4. So I think it's where the top 3 priorities of the city should we invest in. It's number 4. And so I think that we need to move on this and get this. I'm not asking to spend millions of dollars building it. I'm asking for it to be done in a timely manner so that we can seriously work on what our hockey programs are going to look like. Not just our hockey programs, but our ice users across the whole city. And I think this is not something that will burden anything else in the process. So I would ask everyone to support the amendment. There's no further speakers. So we'll deal with the amendment. Was there a recorded vote called for the amendment? Sorry, the amendment is just recommendation number 11, which is to deal with the arena's business case, to add a timeline that it be done between 2019 and 2020. So it's just really the addition of the timeline. The vote's being taken. Those in favor? Those opposed? That motion's defeated on a tie. So now we move to the 2 recommendations from the staff report. We're dealing with the first paragraph only. And recorded vote's been asked. Councillor Singh, have you voted? That's carried unanimously. And the second portion of the recommendation with regards to the DC funding. Those in favor? Those opposed? And that's carried. Mayor Verbanovic?
Thanks, Chair Galloway Seelock. And what I was wanting to say earlier was that I did not support the amendment today. I am going to have some conversations because this was also the first I'd heard any concerns from hockey, and I've had conversations with them as recently as a couple weeks ago. And so that was a bit of a surprise to me. I think we need to fully understand what the impact of doing work now and potentially having to redo it in the future is. And so I may change my vote if we deal with this again at council. But I felt based on the information today, I couldn't support it.
Okay. I turn it over actually to you for special counsel. I guess we might want to, there's a report to deal with, so I don't know if you want to switch or, okay.